Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 7 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, January 23, 2024, in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the Board and to transact any other business to come properly before the Board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, January 18, 2024, caused to be posted at the Office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Patty, can we have a roll call?
Sahar Aziz.
Here.
Rob Bonaccio.
Here.
Kent Diamond.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Charles Gelinas.
Here.
Layla Morelli.
Here.
Sonal Patel.
Here.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz.
Here.
Mary Wickens.
Here.
Casey, can you lead us in the flag salute?
To the flag.
Okay, announcements. CJ, do you have any announcements?
Yes. Completed petitions for candidacy in the April 16, 2024 school board election are being accepted. Petitions are due to Business Administrator Board Secretary Patricia Ramos by 4 p.m. on Monday, February 26. Candidates may email petitions to pramos@westfieldnjk12.org with a copy to mestevez@westfieldnjk12.org or submit by mail to Patricia Ramos, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, 07090. The drawing of names for position on the April 16 ballot will be done by Mrs. Ramos on Wednesday, March 6 at 2 p.m. at 302 Elm Street. The nominating petition and additional information are posted under the Board tab at www.westfieldnjk12.org.
Thanks, CJ. Sahar?
3 Westfield High School students have been recognized with the Lift While You Climb Award in honor of the late Westfield High School principal, Dr. Derek Nelson. Nominated by high school faculty and staff for fall 2023, the 3 recipients of the Lift While You Climb Award are 12th graders Nina Shermack and Diana Hubanova, and 10th grader Mia Sacco. Congratulations to all. And I just want to note that January is Muslim Heritage Month, which has prompted school districts and towns across New Jersey to host programs educating students and residents about the diversity of Muslim heritage. Thank you.
Thanks, Sahar. Layla?
The International Technology and Engineering Education Association has selected Westfield High School engineering teacher Laura Doyle to receive a 2023-2024 Teacher of Excellence Award at an awards ceremony in March. This award recognizes educators who are impacting and making a significant difference in the lives of their students and their development of technological literacy. Congratulations to Mrs. Doyle on this well-deserved honor.
Thank you, Layla. Mary?
23 elementary and intermediate school students received recognition for their thoughtful submissions in an annual essay, poetry, and art contest sponsored by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Westfield. The students and their families attended the 37th annual Interfaith Service on January 15th. You can read about the award recipients under the news section on the district website. Congratulations to all, and thank you to the many students who submitted their creative works for consideration.
Thank you, Mary. Ken?
Yes. Do you know someone who is considering moving to Westfield and wants to know more about our school district? Well, I'm glad you asked, because newly posted under Family and Community on the district website is the Thinking of Moving to Westfield portal with all the key information in one easy-to-navigate space. Check it out.
Thanks, Ken. Brendan?
Yep. On February 1st, the College Men's Club of Westfield will begin accepting scholarships or accepting applications for its 2024 scholarships. The College Men's Club annually awards up to 3 $24,000 four-year scholarships to young men from the Westfield community based on academics, leadership, and financial need. The 2024 application will be available at cmcwestfield.org on the application portal.
Thank you, Brendan. Kristen?
Online registration for kindergarten and first grade is underway for the 2024-2025 school year. Detailed instructions and forms are available under student registration on the district website. Please share this information with your friends and neighbors in Westfield who have young learners. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
The next regular public meeting of the Board of Education will be on Tuesday, February 13th, in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School, beginning at 7 p.m. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access on the Board tab on the district website. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, February 9th, also on the Board tab.
Thank you, Rob. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Scott Cleland for a presentation of the audit for fiscal year 2022-23.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Madam President. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present the results of the 22-23 fiscal year audit. Before I get started, I want to thank the district administration for all their help during the course of the audit, and especially want to recognize Patty Ramos and Carmelina for all the time and effort they put in. As many of you may be aware, the audits have been filed like in March in the last couple of years because the state has been unable to provide information timely enough. And when it came up this year that we were going to receive the information earlier, I talked to Patty and Carmelina. They both said, let's go for the real deadline. So we focused on trying to get the audit done by the December 5th deadline. And just so you know, at the December 5th deadline, only 27% of the school district audits were filed with the state. And you were one of those. So again, that's just a recognition for Patty and Carmelina and their staff for focusing on getting everything we needed so we can get the audit done. As part of the audit, we render an opinion. The opinion is unmodified, which is a clean opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that can be placed on financial statements. And that basically means that everyone provided us, or the district provided us, with all the information necessary in order to say that the numbers in the report are materially stated and accurate. During the year, the fund balance of the district improved, so your financial position improved from the prior year, and you prudently put aside various allowed state statutory regulations for different reserves. You have funds set aside for cap reserve, maintenance reserve, and also for the emergency reserve, again, within state limits. Your food service program and wraparound program both performed with positive results during the year, and your self-insurance fund performed better than it had done in the 21-22 fiscal year. So all good results in all the various funds. As part of the audit, we also spend time looking at your internal controls. We look at how you process purchase orders, accounts payable, revenues and receipts, and payroll. And I'm happy to report that we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. And there are no items that are identified in the auditor's management report. Therefore, you as a board will not have to fill out and approve a corrective action plan. Also, as part of the audit, we're required to look at some of your federal and state grant programs. With all the COVID-19 money that's floating around, obviously that's one of the ones that we looked at. We looked at the educational stabilization funds, which included ESSER and some ARP funds. And then from a state perspective, we looked at your extraordinary aid, which pertains to your special ed students, as well as your debt service aid, all which did not identify any exceptions. Again, there were no findings in the auditor's management report. Very, very clean audit, and this is my first year that I've been involved with this audit. The partner that was on the account for years retired, so I had taken it over, and the audit went very, very clean. So that's always a good from my perspective, that when there's not any issues, there's not a lot to talk about. So with that, I know you received the audit reports, I believe, last Friday. If you have any questions on what I just presented or anything else that's in the report, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you for that report on our audit. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez for a student safety data system report.
Yep. I have a few items that I'll be including this evening, but before I begin my report, I do want to note that January is School Board Recognition Month. It's a time to express our gratitude to our members of the Westfield Board of Education. All of the individuals around me are not only just members of the board, they're neighbors, they're friends, they're community leaders, they're parents, and they volunteer their time and resources to make tough decisions and provide a vision for our educational future. To all of our school board members, I want to sincerely thank you for your service, for your vision, and for your dedication to the Westfield school community. At this time, I'd also like to provide just a quick overview in the notes for the record this evening. We do have the submission for the first period of the school year for the Student Safety Data System Report. This is a report that is submitted twice a year, twice per school year, and it shares the number of incidents that involve violence, vandalism, substances, weapons, and/or HIB in a school district. The number of instances that have led to the removal of students from school, any time that restraint or seclusion was necessary, and this is typically as it relates to the use of those techniques for behaviors that warrant it in programs that involve students who may be emotionally dysregulated. Anytime that we use such a restraint to secure a student, we report them as well as part of this report. We also include in this report alleged HIB as well as any HIB trainings and any HIB programs. So in the Student Safety Data System Report for this period, we include all of those cases broken down by each school. I will defer to anyone to see for themselves what the report looks like. It's located in the last page of the attachments for this board meeting. But as I said, each of those reports come to us directly from the schools as they are reported and mandated by the state to be reported twice a year. On that note, I do also want to use the opportunity to reference the security situation that we encountered yesterday. Given the times that we find ourselves in when we get notified that our schools need to bring all of our students inside because there is police activity happening in or around our area, certainly that raises the alarms. It raises the alarms and the stress levels of those in the district, as I could imagine, for any member of the community or any parent who is encountering a message from the community, a message from the school district, a message from that they might see even on social media. Yesterday, we followed our communication protocols in order to ensure that the community and families were aware of what was going on to the extent that we were able to provide details. Understanding that in situations involving law enforcement that involve safety and security, we're not privy to all the details as school districts. We're privy to those level of details that allow us to ensure that our students are safe and that our schools are safe, and to allow us to cooperate with our partners in law enforcement to ensure that all of those protocols are properly executed. But we don't have levels of details that I know many people, including members of our school staff, our members of our school community, are interested in. But that's certainly because the members of law enforcement who are managing the activity, who are investigating the activity, are the ones who are in control of those details. They need those details in order to conduct their investigation. They need those details in order to follow up with the investigation. And they need those details in order to ensure that their work is conducted and unimpeded. So while I know during those times there may be instances where we're looking for more, but I do want to remind everyone that we communicate what we can communicate, and we also communicate as quickly as we can, recognizing that our first order of business is always to ensure that our students are safe and secure. first and foremost. Then when we get that message out to you, we will ensure that we follow up with that message to let you know the status update and when possible provide you with additional details. A student safety data system report is just an example of how the state requires that we report this out to all of you, but I just want to make sure that the community is aware that in this day and age, as instances arise, we will continue to use our standard forms of communication to ensure that we keep you connected to what's going on in any emergency situation. I've also included in an email out to the community two links. One link is to our crisis communications plan, and that provides additional details about the types of protocols that we enact in emergency situations, as well as information about the details when we would make contact to the families, and most importantly, how you could help us in situations like that, because we know that oftentimes the initial reaction is to call the schools or even come to the schools. But in order for us to maintain the operation in a safe and secure manner, we need to be able to keep our focus on the students and the staff in our buildings. So again, while we have the ability to take our time and review those documents, I would encourage all members of the community to do so. And certainly feel free to reach out to the school principals or to us in central office to be able to answer questions that could help you feel more comfortable. It's a scary time for all of us, but I assure you that our schools are safe. Our cooperation with law enforcement provides us with the sense of security that I know will allow us to continue to make our schools places where students can learn in safe and secure environments. Okay, that concludes my two reports. Now on to the third report for this evening. And it begins with the first of a series of public reports on our school operating budget for the 24-25 school year. We're so used to 23-24, have to start transitioning to 24-25. The 24-25 school year budget is something that we begin to develop in the start of the current school year, and that work continues through the winter and into the spring. So what you will hear this evening is the first of a series of presentations to give you an update as to where we are today and where we're headed. I do want to take the opportunity, before I get started, to also acknowledge that the audit report certainly is something that we take pride in, but is also the hard work and diligence of a business office led by Patricia Ramos and Carmelina Janisis? Okay. And who work together with the administrators, work with their office staff to ensure that the fiscal matters in this district are appropriately attended to. So when we receive information about clean audits, it gives me the comfort and the confidence that our fiscal affairs, while dire potentially at times, are certainly managed with the utmost care and consideration. And as we build our budgets and develop our budgets for next year, we have the same level of scrutiny and the same level of attention that goes into it to ensure that we are maximizing the taxpayer dollars in order to ensure that our student experiences are at the highest level. The presentation that we're going to do this evening is available on the district website associated with this board meeting. So in the same space on the website where you find the agenda, the attachments, you will also find a link to this presentation. So if there's anything that you would like to revisit, you're more than welcome to do so through that link. I'm going to work both my computer and the presentation at one time. Okay. So tonight what you are going to hear is an overview of where we are, starting with a roadmap of how we got to where we are today. We're also going to provide an overview of the most recent public law that was signed that impacts the public vote on the budget in April. We'll also talk about and review the 2023-2024 budget The budget that we are currently enacting, the budget that was first voted on last year by the community that included additions to our school district that I am thrilled to say have been already making an impact on our student experiences. We'll also discuss how the 24-25 school operating budget aligns with our strategic plan, and in doing so, provide a quick mid-year report on the work of our strategic plan. And then leading into the development of the 24-25 budget, we want to highlight our governing priorities and then give a general overview of the preliminary budget, recognizing that this early in the process, there's still data that we are waiting. We are waiting on information from our health broker, our health insurance broker, to be able to provide us with accurate percentages to factor into the budget for calculating insurance increases for next year. We also are awaiting state aid figures that don't get released by the governor's office until the end of February. So a lot of the figures, a lot of the percentages that we're basing off of are presuming that figures are coming in at certain levels, and certainly Ms. Ramos will go into greater detail. We also, at this point in time, have not had an opportunity to have a full conversation with the Board of Education, so we want to make sure that this, as our first opportunity, has the benefit of being able to hear from the board about what direction we need to go to ensure that we develop administratively a budget for their consideration that reflects the needs and priorities of the Board of Education and certainly of the community. And then last but not least, we'll talk about the next steps in the upcoming presentations ahead. So this budget roadmap is a variation of something that we've done before, and fortunately, I think we are now about 3 budget cycles beyond where we were when I first came, where this was something that was relatively new in how we were presenting it as a journey that took us from a period before 2010, when communities throughout New Jersey were accustomed to voting on school district budgets, to then 2011 and beyond, when that started to change after there were tremendous changes in how school districts were funded and the amount of state aid we're receiving. So for 10 to 12 years after that, the school community of Westfield was not accustomed to voting on school district budgets. As the school board elections were moved to November, the school district operating budgets no longer required a community vote as long as we did not increase the tax levy for the subsequent year by more than 2%, or the cap at that time. The cap could have been adjusted in any given year depending on healthcare adjustments or enrollment waivers that we may have been eligible for, but by and large, 2% was our general cap over a 12-year period. And unfortunately, in the last few years, we discovered that the ability for us to fully fund and support the maintenance of a operating budget that allows us to keep our current levels of staff, keep our current levels of program, keeping our class sizes and enrollments in check, unfortunately was no longer possible with a 2% tax levy cap. So that is why in 2023, the Board of Education, after a year prior of having to make drastic cuts to our operating budget, the Board of Education made the decision and voted on a resolution to return the vote back to the community, and that's where we found ourselves this past year. The community had the opportunity to hear from the Board of Education, hear from the administration, and then exercise their civic responsibility to vote on whether or not to support an increase to the tax levy that fortunately was passed last year and allowed us to continue our work into this year. So moving into this current year, we find ourselves once again in familiar territory. This first meeting will give that overview. And at this time, what I'm going to do is ask our school business administrator, Patricia Ramos, to walk us through the latest updates to the Public Law 2023 that impacts the vote for this coming spring.
Thank you, Ray. So you may have noticed a few weeks ago, Ray had included on one of the board check-ins about Senate Bill 4209, which basically stated that districts that moved to the April election would only need to vote on any additional spending proposals. The 2% cap would now go back to the Board of Education to vote on and approve, just as what would happen in the November election. That moved a lot faster than we thought it would, and it was signed into law last week. So what that means for us is come April, the Board of Education will vote on the base budget. So that's the 2% plus if we got any adjustments, which I'm not anticipating this year. You never know, but I'm not anticipating it. The Board of Education would vote on that budget, and that would be the end of it. It would be approved. Anything above the 2% plus the adjustments would go to the taxpayers. So instead of a question 2, it will now be referred to as an additional spending proposal. It'll look the same on the ballot as it did last year, but it will be the only question on the ballot. And then, of course, there'll be the board candidate election will still go on as normal. The change with that was it just solidified that board members serve through April 30th, and it solidified some dates where we have to have meetings, where we have to look at. We think this is a positive for us. It's a positive that the state is addressing the situation. They recognize a lot more districts are looking to move to April. The 2% cap is not working, and this is a way that they're trying, it's a start. It's a start that they're actually addressing something, which they haven't done since 2011. There's been no movement on this. So it was pretty big how fast this moved and then it was signed into law.
Thank you, Patty. So again, just to think, 2 years ago, we were voting on budgets as a board, and there was no community vote. Last year, we get acclimated and educated about how to then present the vote to the public. 2 questions, and now the law changes again. So I appreciate the update, but it is certainly a message that we are going to want to make sure is loud and clear and consistent, both at these meetings and in our public presentations, to make clear that the community is aware that the board will have the opportunity to approve a base budget that will not exceed the tax levy cap, and that anything above the tax levy cap will require an approval by the community via vote. So, as I mentioned, I'd just like to quickly revisit some of the work from last year, because I think it's important to note when the board and the administration build a budget together, we do so with the intent to be able to reflect the values and priorities that are representative in our school districts. And last year, that proposal that we presented to the community included the addition of elementary guidance counselors, interventionists, and academic support teachers, as well as in our base budget, we also included the approval of ESL teachers. These all represent additions to the school budget that we had not seen in quite some time. Oftentimes, when there were additions to the budget of staffing, it unfortunately came at the subtraction or the cost of other items. So the fact that we were able to present this as an addition was exciting, but we didn't take it for granted. So what I want to do tonight is just give a quick update of the impact that we have experienced already with the benefit of these additional positions. So for instance, in the intermediate level, we included additional interventionists for both reading and writing, as well as an interventionist for math at the intermediate levels, at each intermediate level. And what that means is that we have individuals who are going to work with our students who are at risk for struggling in each of those areas, to be able to provide them with targeted instruction to assist them in meeting with success. With those additions at the intermediate level, we saw 141 students receiving targeted reading instruction, 161 intermediate students receiving writing instruction, as well as 125 intermediate students receiving individualized math support. Again, all of those students were able to benefit by the additions of those interventionists, And had we not had those individuals available to us, those same numbers of students, unfortunately, would have not had that same level of support. That level of support would have been made available to the extent possible by the classroom teacher, but that classroom teacher, as we know, would be attending to all the student needs. This allows us to truly target our work. And as we've shared in many presentations this year, providing a multi-tiered system of support allows us to utilize both our classroom teachers and our ancillary staff to be able to provide both general and more specialized and targeted interventions when possible. Now, the interventionist data that we highlight here is in addition to the interventionist data that already exists and is existed at the elementary level, where our academic support program continued to operate as usual. We then moved into adding additional counselors. The counselors at the elementary level, if you recall from last year, used to be shared. So we didn't have dedicated counseling staff at each of our elementary schools. So we were able to staff our counseling department throughout the district to be able to have dedicated staff at each of the elementary levels. In addition to our school guidance counselors at the secondary level, we were also able to provide student assistance coordinators or counselors at the secondary level, so that at each intermediate school, and then an additional SAC at the high school, we now have the ability to once again provide additional and dedicated targeted support. So with those additional staff members, you'll see here the individual student engagements on a monthly basis averaged around 1,200 students at the high school level, with 80 of those engagements being divided between the two SACs at the high school. We have 300 intermediate counseling engagements at the intermediate level, with 60 intermediate engagements by the SAC. And what this represents is information that we're able to gather from our student information system that tracks when our counselors have these engagements. At the elementary level, we have, again, across our 6 elementary schools and Lincoln schools, we have about 200 engagements. Which suggests that our counselors, on average, are engaging with students about 10 students a day, being able to provide them the social emotional support and targeted assistance that they need to manage the school experience. In addition to those individual engagements, we also see that our counselors are able to put together group sessions, including lunch bunches, mindful Mondays, social skills, and other opportunities to acclimate students to their environments, whether it be as new students to the high school or just even new students to the district. All of these additional resources, again, are only made possible because we have the staff now available to us. The staff that we had before, again, I am grateful and thankful for their efforts, but when they were spread across different schools or spread across even more students, then their ability to carve out additional time for some of these targeted and additional supports just weren't there. So we are thankful and grateful that these supports have existed in the way that you see thus far and will continue to be in place for the remainder of the year. And then last but not least, the addition of our ESL staff. If you recall from last year, ESL teachers were limited in what schools they serviced. They serviced schools on both the north side and the south side at the elementary level. They serviced students at the intermediate level only at Edison, and then, of course, at the high school. Well, our students who are multi-language learners, unfortunately, don't only go to those schools. So we would have to move them and ask them to go to those schools, even if they weren't the schools where they lived near. So in being able to increase our ESL staff, we were fortunately able to then staff our schools in such a way that allowed all students to remain educated in their home schools and receive the appropriate level of multilingual language support from qualified ESL teachers in our ESL program. And as you see from the data on the screen, within our district, Across the 10 schools, we have 21 countries who are represented with 15 different languages. So it's not just a single language that we are working with. We are working with students who are coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, and different linguistic experiences. The addition of the new ESL teachers allows us to share them across the schools so that they're not dedicated in each school, but they are able to provide those supports to students in their home schools on a scheduled basis. This year alone, we had 97 multilingual learners across the district. That is an increase from prior years, with 24 of those multilingual students being identified as newly qualifying in this year, being new to this district, and if not possibly new to the country. All of those additional services and supports allow our ESL teachers to work hand in hand with our classroom teachers to provide push-in services where they may go into a classroom to assist students or assist a teacher, or they provide those pull-out services where they pull students out into small groups or one-on-one engagements. And in all cases, being able to provide them with both the social and the cognitive language skills to be able to successfully navigate our educational system. You'll also notice by some of the imagery on this slide that even beyond that, our ESL teachers are instrumental in being able to help our students get acclimated into the culture of the school, culture of their new environment, and also providing support for families in the work that they provide to our community. So as we move into the coming school year, we want to be able to think about the success of those additions from last year and try to create an equally successful proposal for this coming school year. And what we didn't have last year that we have now this year is a plan. That plan that I'm referring to is the strategic plan. The strategic plan was in development last year. The strategic plan was gaining steam as we gathered feedback from our community, from our Board of Education, and from our strategic plan steering committee in order to identify those goals and objectives that would help to be able to keep us focused and moving forward. The strategic plan that we shared in the fall and that was approved by the board in the fall highlighted the activities that we were going to focus on for this year. We did not focus on presenting activities for years 2 through 4 because in part those activities are going to be contingent on the resources that we have available to us as well as on our experiences from this year. So for us, our work to implement our strategic plan is really an effort to help us better gauge what we need to be successful in forwarding our school districts in each of the 5 goal areas, which I will walk through briefly in the next few slides. So the first goal focused on deepening the learning experiences of all students to prepare for them for their futures. And when you think about our school district, the most important thing to note is that the primary resource for teaching and learning comes in the form of our curriculum. Our curriculum as a school district is undergoing a tremendous and significant revamp and upgrade. I'm thrilled to say that has been taking place since the start of the school year with work that is engaging our teachers and our administrators in deeper understandings in conceptions about what students not only are expected to learn, but what they need to learn, and what that looks like in a way that allows us to provide greater consistency across grade levels and across schools in our district. The curriculum planning that underscores the objectives of Goal 1 certainly may seem to be only one bullet on this slide, but I assure you it takes on a large portion of the work that is taking place this year. We've also included work to support science-based reading, spelling, and handwriting program into our 3rd grade with a tremendous amount of resource and professional development being allocated to that effort. And we're also expanding our opportunities to increase experiences for students at the high school level to receive high school credit as well as college level credit for taking those courses in our high schools. So we've worked with Syracuse University to enter into a partnership in the future with them through their Project Advance dual enrollment program. And we've also engaged in dual enrollment with Kean University and the University of Delaware to take courses that we are currently offering and allowing students to enroll in those courses and also pay for college credit to take with them upon graduation. In addition to deepening the learning experiences for students in the areas of curriculum and course offerings, as I've shared, we've also talked about throughout the course of the year our multi-tiered system of supports in the area of reading, and in particular the New Jersey tiered reading intervention system that is currently being piloted at the elementary level in Franklin School and in Lincoln School in both kindergarten and first grades. And the reason that that's important for us is because that is providing us with the tools, the data, and the expertise and the experience in order to ensure that we develop reading experiences that ensure that our students are able to be competent and confident readers, decoders, and develop comprehension skills that they will obviously carry through their educational experience. But that is also providing us with the same level of professional development and expertise that is allowing all of our classroom teachers to develop those base level tier 1 strategies that are going to allow all of our students to meet with success. And those who need additional support will then be supported by those interventionists, as I shared earlier, or other resources that may become available to them. And then last but not least, included in this goal is an examination of school schedules. There's been questions about whether or not we're ever going to be able to see block scheduling at the high school. Are we ever going to see full-day kindergarten in this school district? Well, as a strategic plan goal, schedules and time is an area of focus, and that work is already under review and under study by the administration in order to look at different options for structuring our school schedules across all grade levels. Moving on to goal number 2, we also identified school culture and practices that prioritize wellness as another goal for our school district. And similar to our academic supports, we're also implementing a multi-tiered system of supports for social, emotional, and student well-being. And that also looks at those additional counselors and those additional student assistance coordinators as resources to assist us in making sure that our students' social and emotional needs are met at the basic classroom level, but also have those additional resources if more specialized and targeted support is necessary. We're also, through this goal, doing a deep dive into a holistic wellness program. And our school counseling department, along with our assistant superintendent, are exploring different options for programs that we could implement holistically across all grade levels from pre-K to 12. And that work is continuing throughout this year. And then last but not least, in this particular goal, the continued focus on student assemblies and parent academies really takes advantage of the newfound expertise of our counselors at the intermediate level, the student assistance coordinators, who could be able to provide those experiences that support not only our students, but also if you were able to attend the overview by our SACs in December, also give our parents the resources and access to personnel that could assist them in helping their students meet with success. Goal number 3 was a goal that continued our work to increase diversity, equity, and inclusivity across all of our academic programs and extracurricular programs. And as we've seen in prior board agendas, included in that was ensuring that we provided our staff with the necessary resources to assist them in supporting this endeavor in our classrooms. So our work with district administrators, our newly hired DEI coordinator, looked at our existing current instructional practices as well as evaluation practices to ensure that they're aligned with both best practices in pedagogy and brain-based research, ultimately to ensure that culturally responsive teaching and learning in essence, is ensuring that our classrooms are welcoming environments and open environments and safe environments for students, for all students. So the work in that effort continues and focuses on ensuring that our administrators are leading the way and supporting our students and our teachers. We also have relaunched our DEI Steering Committee and DEI Advisory Committee with work to scheduled to explore and enhance our understanding of equity, empathy, and inclusion in our school community, and again, helping to be a sounding board for all the work that's taking place in the classroom and in our schools. And then you'll notice Objective 2 refers to the staff professional development that took place in September and October, where our new staff institute and our teachers, existing teachers, were able to receive additional teaching strategy support on how to nurture that open and respectful learning environment for all voices and perspectives. Moving on to goal number 4. We look to strengthen the relationship between the schools, the district, and the community. This was a goal that came about as a clear area of strength for our school district, where our community partners are not only willing and able, but enthusiastically ready to support us in the work that we do. And in order for us to capitalize on that, we identified a series of objectives to try to organize those resources in a way to help them help us, and also to be able to provide each of our entities with access to information to ensure that the alignment of our missions and goals are consistent. So some of the work in this area included the work to develop a digital community partner directory that brings together all of our community partners into a single resource so that we know who we can reach out to when we need assistance, or when folks reach out to us offering assistance, we would be able to direct them to the appropriate school or department to assist in our respective endeavors. We also created, as you heard this evening, a Thinking of Moving to Westfield portal. And that was a portal that was designed to assist our realtors in being able to work with their prospective clients to provide them with accurate and detailed information about our school districts so that we can ensure that they walk into our schools with up-to-date and current information from the moment they purchase their home. We've also included opportunities to maximize our alumni relations, as well as working with different community stakeholders to ensure that our voice of the community is not just limited to individuals who are around this room or individuals who are in our schools, but also those who are at the community at large. Those who may not be able to attend our meetings, but who have an interest, we want to make sure that their voices are equally represented, and we are seeking ways to increase that opportunity whenever possible. And that's part of the work of our goal number 4, to strengthen the community partnership with the school district. And then, of course, last but not least is goal number 5. That goal is the all-encompassing goal because it identifies finances and facilities as critical components to the success of the other 4 goals. Included in those goals were objectives that focused on conducting studies to establish baseline needs and future opportunities as it relates to both our facilities and our enrollment. So over the past several months, we've conducted facilities walkthroughs and a demographic study. We look to present the results of that demographic study at the upcoming board meeting and in future meetings, allowing the details of the facilities walkthroughs to come through in the recommendations that we are going to be making for either facilities upgrades or bond referendums in the future. We've also been sending buildings and ground staff to Rutgers University in order to get certified, receive additional education regarding field maintenance strategies in order to maximize the use of our existing resources to be able to maintain our fields and certainly recondition them for the betterment and sustainability of our athletics and educational programs. We've also been using that same emphasis in creating sustainable and safe schools to pursue different recognitions at the state level. We are currently working with schools, Sustainable Jersey for Schools, in order to recognize our efforts and help us channel our efforts to create more sustainable practices across all schools and all departments. And we're also looking at ways to provide more safe school opportunities by partnering with Safe Routes to Schools partners such as Easy Ride in order to ensure that pedestrian and bike safety initiatives are part and parcel of the work that we do to educate our students at the elementary level and hopefully into the intermediate and secondary level. We've also included as hallmarks of our efforts in this endeavor to become more sustainable the fact that all of our interior lighting was recently retrofitted through a grant program in order to provide more efficient LED lighting and through the rebate programs at a fraction of the cost. All of the interior lighting throughout the district was replaced and retrofitted, all for a few $100s. I think it was
about $600.
$600.
The whole district.
So all of these things are efforts that are channeled to be able to be consistent with our priorities as a school district, but certainly in order to maximize our resources so that we could put them towards other needed areas. Objective number 3 in the finance and facilities category talks about developing safe schools. And as I mentioned earlier, safe schools is not just about our practices and our protocols, but this is also in reference to how we ensure that our facilities are safe. Those facilities upgrades can be anything from looking at how our schools are fortified, to what technology we use to manage our schools, or in this case, what technologies we are using to manage visitors into our schools. And that is yet another opportunity for us to, again, reallocate resources in a way to ensure that we keep our schools as safe as possible for staff and students throughout the day. Other opportunities that we are looking for support in carries over into the work with our municipal partners, as well as other school districts. So the final objective in this particular goal looks at conversations that we are engaging in with the town administrator and neighboring school districts to identify possible shared services and potentially ways we could work together to manage our school district fields along with the resources available to the municipality. Again, all of that work is the work that has taken place between July 1st and now. A lot of work that is still yet to be done, but certainly speaks to how we are funneling our efforts and our energies, but also how you will see ways we want to ensure that our strategic plan will be reflected in the current budget. So as we think about ways our current budget can support our strategic plan, we want to make sure that our current budget continues to prioritize academics and wellness with an emphasis on curriculum and program development. So you've heard in both, well, actually in goals 1, 2, and 3, the importance of curriculum and program development in order to ensure that our students are met with success in both the academic, social, emotional, and in our DEI goals. But we also want to see not only how we prioritize that, but how we can expand and enhance those programs and offerings. We want to look at ways that we can, within our school district, provide resources that either we currently can offer or that we have to send students out of district to do. So we would look to expand and enhance those offerings as a goal of this strategic plan, as well as a goal for this upcoming budget. And then, as mentioned previously in the last slide, we want to look at ways that we could continue to improve and sustain our school facilities and district fields. However, to do so, we experience the same challenges that we had before. Costs continue to rise above 2%, the 2% cap. So with the tax levy cap that the board is limited to, we unfortunately would not be able to build a budget that meets all of those needs and stay within 2%. There's no health care or enrollment adjustments expected, so 2% will be 2%. And while we're hoping for and expecting state aid for this year, we still won't know for sure. But under the state's S2 funding formula, that was the funding formula that allowed school districts throughout the state to get adjustments to their state aid over the last several years, that will be running out by the end of this year. So we don't expect that same level of support that we had received in the prior years that had slowly and incrementally increased to continue to increase in future years. So that continues to be something that we keep in mind as we build our budgets and as we present additional spending proposals to the community. And certainly not to mention the limitations that we have on our budget, we also have limitations on our facilities. We'd love to expand all of our programs. We'd love to increase all of our opportunities for students to receive all of these services, but in many ways, we just don't have the space to do so. So without voter approval via bond referendum to expand our facilities, we still are limited in how much we could expand our school programs. But that doesn't mean we can't continue to expand in other ways. So at this time, I'm going to ask Patty to take us into the conversation about what our budget looks like as of today.
So as Ray said earlier, this is a very preliminary budget. That's why you're just seeing the bar graph that a lot of you, at least the board, will recognize from last year. We found it a very useful tool in explaining the different pieces of the budget, the tax levy. But we don't know our health yet. I'm still working with the broker to come up with finalized numbers on that. As Ray said, we don't have state aid yet. This is the last year, as he said, of S2 funding, so we are expecting a bump in state aid. I don't know what that'll be. Last year was a little over $900,000. We had an increase. So that's still going to impact these numbers as we go forward. But what we're looking at now, just to maintain our current staffing, our current programs that we're offering in district, we would be at a 3.58% budget. Now that does include some shifts that you'll see later on in different presentations where we may be bringing some special ed programs in-house, but by doing things like that, we're also offsetting other costs where students might have to go out of district, now they'll stay in district. So there's no real expansion in here, it's just maintaining our current status quo. Anything above that would be added on top of the red. But again, as we get more state aid, as other factors are known, we are hopeful that it will change this a little bit, the look of this.
So I do want to highlight, what this represents is the continuation of the existing work, continuation of the existing levels of support for our students through our counselors, through our classroom teachers, through our academic support interventionists, to our ESL teachers. So again, this represents a continuity of programs and services, continuity of enrollments and class sizes from the current year to the next year. But as you see, unfortunately, it does not fit into a 2% tax levy increase. So in order for us to see the continuity of these services and supports, we would still require support from our community and need the community to weigh in. What we did last year was we found ourselves in the same situation. We found ourselves presenting at the first meeting, this level of detail and this level of budgeting because we did not want to presume that the board was in favor of expanding our budget options and budget offerings for the coming year. We want to make sure we have that conversation here. So what we'd like to do is, we have one more slide, but what we're going to ask the board to consider in their review of this presentation and the subsequent discussion is direction that you could provide us to give us the green light to continue to explore opportunities to identify enhancements and program options and supports that allow us to continue to fulfill the goals and objectives of our strategic plan, to take the work that we started this year and build upon that, take the work that we've talked about and previously and build upon that. But again, in order to do so, we just need feedback from everyone here. So our next steps, as mentioned, would be at the February 13th budget presentation, we would include the outcome of this conversation with a level of detail to provide any potential program enhancements that would be listed on the April 16th ballot. On February 29th, we would then take the release of state aid and factor that into our budget so that by March 5th, a presentation of the preliminary budget would take into account the additions that and enhancements that were presented on the 13th. It would then finalize the budget figures, the expenditures and the revenues, in order to submit that preliminary budget to the county office of the Department of Education for their review. And then on March 26th, the board would hold their public hearing on the final base budget, as well as the additional spending proposal for the April ballot. And on March 26th, the board would vote on that base budget, that first portion of that bar graph. And then on April 16th, once the additional spending proposal was approved on March 26th, on April 16th, the budget vote and the board election would take place in order to finalize that additional spending proposal for the upcoming school year. I do want to invite everyone to review our 24-25 budget portal, which was launched this evening. It is available on the district website and will be updated frequently with presentations, with facts and figures, and with additional resources, as well as any frequently asked questions, to ensure that any member of the community has access to the latest and greatest information that is available. So that concludes our first presentation. At this time, I will turn it back to the board president.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez and Patty, for that detailed presentation with our roadmap to our 24-25 budget process. So at this time, if there are any board members that have questions that they'd like to bring up, please let me know. Go ahead, Sar.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez, for that comprehensive presentation. And I'll just reiterate what you said, how important it is for our community to be engaged in this. This is the most important, I think, vote that the board takes year-round. So I just have a couple questions to help think through the priorities of the district, which of course I defer to you and the senior administrators to recommend, because you all are the ones administering the district. So first is the Syracuse University Project Advanced Program, Keene University, and University of Delaware. I think it's excellent. I believe that means that the students can now get college credit during high school, right? Which is excellent. However, I'm just curious, how will that practically play out? Are these online classes? Maybe at Keene University, potentially they're going to get bused there, but Syracuse and University of Delaware are far away. So I guess the first question is, how will they actually take these classes? And two, how do they get admitted? Is it a test? Is it based on GPA? Is there a limit? As a result, there will be a filtering process, but just to help us understand, and obviously what cost will there be to the district, if any?
So in general, dual enrollment programs allow school districts throughout the country to offer college-level courses on site. So we partner with colleges and universities who allow us to either, in some cases, allow our courses to count towards their catalog, or we actually adopt their curriculum and actually implement that in our district. So in the in the case of the University of Delaware, in the case of Syracuse University, they actually have curricula and courses that we would then teach by our staff. So the requirements generally are on the instructors, so that our instructors generally have to have a master's degree, for instance, as well as may require additional training or professional development. Again, each school, each college or university has a different set of requirements, but in doing so, it allows us essentially to have two transcripts. The Westfield High School transcript would reflect our course, and then the respective institution of higher education would have their own transcript. So a student who chooses to enroll in these classes and chooses to secure the college credit would essentially have a Syracuse University transcript that would identify the 3 courses, 2 courses, 1 course, however many courses, so that when they move into the post high school experience, they would have their high school transcript as well as their those additional college transcripts to be able to put towards their undergraduate experience. So there would be no traveling necessary by students, no virtual. They would be taught by our students in our school.
And how does that affect AP? In other words, as you know, the AP curriculum has its own very strict syllabus. Would students then have to choose between AP and college credit?
It affords options, in essence. So, the AP students, students who take AP classes would have the benefit of having that advanced placement potentially being applied and used throughout, schools that perhaps a dual enrollment, credit may not necessarily aligned to. So we're going to, when we build out a robust dual enrollment program, that's part of the conversation that we need to have as a district, is really how we don't want to duplicate our efforts. We want to complement our efforts to be able to give students who may not necessarily want to or feel they're strong enough to take an AP class to still have the ability of an advanced experience and potential benefit of college level credit benefits later on. But they're not necessarily the same, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the counseling side, to make sure that our students are properly educated and counseled, our parents are properly educated and counseled. There's no guarantee that if you take a dual enrollment course that every school will count it. So there's sort of some consideration that needs to take place, but it's considered within the realm of course planning that APs are, but it wouldn't necessarily replace.
And then do we need additional teachers? Will that take from other classes or?
No, that's why we look to identify those opportunities within our course offerings that allow us to take advantage of the experience and expertise and education of our staff. I am always impressed by the level of education that I see among our staff. The number of staff members with masters and doctorates is certainly not something I see everywhere. So that affords us even more opportunities to bring some of these opportunities to bear for our students.
Thank you. Rob?
I have more questions, but you can add me to the queue.
Yeah. Rob?
Sure. So a couple things I just want to point out to the public that were mentioned here, but also that also inform the budget process, just things that I've learned being part of finance and facilities and seeing where we are. So one of the things that I'm always happy to see, and that has come up in various committee meetings that I've been part of, is that before our administrative team is looking to add, they're looking to reallocate. So, part of our curriculum report, for example, last time was that Dr. Bolton is looking at the curriculum budget, but he's doing so in a way that says, well, are we allocating the resources we have properly, right? Before we ask for more, make sure that we're allocating what we have in the right places. Are things outdated? Do things need to be improved upon within? So when the district comes to us asking for a certain budget and maybe more on top of it, I want to see that happening first, which based on certainly what I've seen preliminarily, it seems to be the case. The second thing that I've picked up with as well, look, there are things that, any one of us when we're budgeting, within our own families, if we want more of something or different something, we cut other things, right? There's a limited amount of revenue that comes in through salaries and whatnot. And you only have so much that you can work with. I have learned in this process that the idea of budgeting at a school district involves a level of understanding that generally also involves the removal of some levels of logic. There are state requirements that we are required to work in, some of which don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense for our district, quite frankly, but we've got to go and do them anyway. So folks will look at it, as I did when I first got on the board, looking at the budget saying, why in the world are we doing this? We don't need to. This isn't something that even applies to us. And yet we have a budget allocation for it. I said, we'll cut it. We don't do it. We can't. Why? Because we have to. Because then we'll be out of compliance with what's going on in the state. So I would suggest strongly to the public, first of all, if you got better ideas, like definitely read through the budget if you can. I know it's not exactly the most fun thing to do on a weekend evening. You know, I ran for this, so obviously I wanted to do it, and I'm going to continue to do it. But just understand that some of the stuff that we like to do isn't things that we can move out and reallocate in as simple a manner as we can do here. So that I want to recognize the challenge that we're going through as part of doing this. And, you know, talk about public bidding laws, adding it to all of that. It just, you know, when prices are going up and costs are going up, and we only have a certain way we can shop around, that also makes things a little bit more difficult to work with. So when things are coming to the budget and are being added to the budget, you understand there's a lot more background that goes into it. So I'm going to end by answering, I think, or at least giving my answer to the question that you asked, which is what's the board's appetite for going above and beyond the status quo? My short answer to you is it depends. Which is a deeply unsatisfying answer, but one that I think balances our duty to the public and our duty to the students. We, I think quite positively, have asked our district administration when they're submitting budgets to come in with everything, right? Tell us what you want, tell us what you need, give us the wish list, justifiable of course, but give us the wish lists. I think before I say, yes, let's jack up a budget and add it in, I'd love to see some of the wish lists. What is exactly that's out of the range? Because that will allow us, I think, to go back to constituents of ours and get feedback. You know, what we may think, you know, the 9 of us here is important may not necessarily jive with what people are seeing out, you know, outside as they're educating their kids and dropping their kids off. So, you know, I don't know how you continue to run in place. We did that a lot for too many years, right? Eventually, when you run in place, you're going to get lapped, and the finish line does not come to you. You come to the finish line. So my initial instinct is, yeah, we got to do better than just keeping what's in place. But before I say, yes, go hazard forward, I'd certainly want to see a little bit more about what's there. And I know this is the very beginning of that process, and I know that comes, but I just want, that's my perspective is sure, maybe. Let's see.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Layla?
I was going to say something similar, which is I'd like to see the wish list. I know that you all have worked hard with the administrators and the supervisors to see what they're asking for, but I'd like to see also, I don't know if it's a possibility, but to get a pulse on the community wish list as well. If we could do some kind of poll or survey. I don't know if that's even something that is something that we can do, but that was my first thought. I'm a little more inclined to say yes. Let's ask for lots of things that we want. My second thing was when we're talking about the dual enrollment. You know, there's been a problem expressed for years about that kids are limited in what they can take due to scheduling constraints. I'm hopeful that with the dual enrollment, and maybe we can talk about it more at a later point, there will be more opportunities for students to take courses through different means, including dual enrollments for like financial literacy through the internet or, you know, through different districts. And I was wondering if there's a possibility that any of these courses could be offered over the summer, like how college courses do it. You know, they I don't know if it's a possibility, but sometimes they have like a condensed college course over the summer, and you can opt in to that. It's just food for thought.
So I'd like to add on to that as well, that, yeah, I'm also interested in trying to start to build up our offerings and what we can do, since we have been in place for so long, and now we're at a point where we can build on. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we do have a strategic plan, so I would like to see that we tie whatever we do add on to the strategic plan and get our ideas from there, as well as from administration, what they've already put together as items they've identified that need, that could really benefit us, and in the priorities they've put together. So I think that's also something we need to look at from their side, what they've already presented to us or are presenting to us. Zahar?
Okay, so I have a bit of a different perspective than Rob, because I had a stark discovery when I first, a very jarring and startling discovery when I first got on the school board, which is that, to put it in perhaps vernacular layperson's term, we're broke in terms of the having to lay off. We got to the point where we had to lay off staff, and we heard the disapproval and understandable grievances and dissatisfaction by our parents. So when you get to the point where you have to lay off staff, that is crisis mode, especially for a school district that has had to, I'll just repeat what I said last year and the year before. We have at least $35 million less money today than we would have as a school district if it weren't for the 2% cap that was put into place in 2010. So as a result, our district has pretty much cut everything it possibly can over the past decade, to the extent that, again, we had to lay off staff. And we're just trying to rebuild what we had. And again, it's going to take a long time to even get back to the same level. So I would really like to understand how we can continue to rejuvenate and bring back what we presumably used to have, because when you no longer have 40 million, and we estimated that based on the 4.9% increase every year that got cut to 2%, and that 2% wasn't even enough to keep up with the cost of living increase, which usually range between 2.5 to 3%, depending on the year. So that's where a lot of the cuts came. So my question to Dr. Gonzalez, I'm not asking you to answer this today, but just as a thought experiment, some of the things that have come up that I hope fit into the strategic plan is things such as, improving science labs, returning after-school enrichment programs, especially for elementary and middle school kids, such as robotics, debate, coding, other 21st century skills, maintaining our athletic fields, which we've heard quite a bit about from our pro-sports town. But in light of the fact that we no longer have the Edison Turf Field renovation project, which was going to be funded by the city, now we need to decide whether we're going to maintain our fields or we're going to not have anything for our athletes except the minimal. And then renovating the internal facilities of our very old buildings. So that's separate from building new buildings or establishing a full-day kindergarten, which requires a referendum. But I think, we've seen the roofs and we've seen all the other problems. These are old buildings, so that also costs money. So I guess my question is, and I understand in February 13th, you're going to provide more details, but these are just some of the things that I've come across during my time on the school board is, where do you see the primary space for, you said, this was on the presentation, student academics and wellness with an emphasis on curriculum program development, enhance and expand offerings, including in-district programs, and then you talked about district fields. So can you give us a little bit more of what you're thinking? I don't, if you don't feel comfortable doing that before February 13th, I respect that, but it would be helpful for us to just get a general idea of what you're seeing from your vantage point.
Sure, and I appreciate and respect the desire for the detail, and I certainly look forward to being able to provide it. I think the most important thing is that the work that we are doing is certainly work that doesn't start after this meeting. We've been having these conversations. We've been thinking about these things. We've been looking at the work of our strategic plan, and in some cases, it's not necessarily to replace what we lost, but to catch up on things that have, over the last 10 years, education in the world has evolved a lot. And we haven't been able to bring those things in all cases. And that's not to say we as a district are missing out. We have a phenomenal district. We have phenomenal teachers, and they have done amazing things with the resources that we have. But there are additional resources that I know we could bring to our schools that allow us to take advantage of the experience and the expertise to do even more. So I think some of it is going to be ensuring that we have the most up-to-date resources, educational and curricular and teaching tools, as well as looking at the facilities and the resources as well. So I think many of the things that have been mentioned are conversations that we've been having as a community and as a board. I think some of the topics that have just been brought up, and things that have been part and parcel of really the emphasis behind all of these priorities being established as part of our strategic plan. I wanted to make sure through a strategic plan that it obligated us as a board and as an administration to deliver. So anything that we do is going to ensure that it does reflect that as our priority, so that I think, in what you'll see and what you'll hear on the 13th will be indicative of many of the things that have been brought up today and in prior years. Again, how much? Because we can't get it all done at once is one thing, but we certainly will continue to make incremental progress. I'm very confident of that.
I guess I just want to state my position that I hope that we grow and improve rather than stagnate. And so asking for simply the money we need just to remain the same, I would interpret that as regression because of that loss of, $35 million plus dollars that we've lost in tax revenue over 12 years. Thank you.
Anybody else? Kristen?
I pretty much echo Sahar, Layla, Sonal, and Rob when I'd like to say that I do not want to stay status quo. I definitely want to see expansion, and I look forward to what you have to present in February. And then I also am curious, do you know, we've talked, and I know I saw it in finance, and then you spoke about it today, when the potential referendum might be presented to the public?
Well,
That's in my finance report.
Oh, it is.
So I'll wait. I can wait, that's fine.
We met with the architects today, so we're looking at a possibility of next April for that. Next December is too close of a time frame, so we're thinking it could be around then. That's the earliest.
So it would be in coordination with the following budget?
Mhm.
Got it, okay. And then community outreaches, when will those begin? Like how we went around and educated everybody?
Yep. So we actually, with the launching of the board portal, the budget portal, we'll be including all of those community engagement dates. But once the board approves the March 26th first proposal, or the base budget, and the additional proposal is finalized, then between March 26th and the vote, we will have a series of in-person, virtual, morning, noon, and night presentations in order to make sure we get the word out.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to turn it over to Casey Eisner for the student representative report.
As we close out the second marking period at Westfield High School, students and staff are heading into the second semester strong. On Friday, January 5th, SGA held a school-wide game show activity period. Many students and staff members volunteered from the crowd to compete in challenges ranging from trivia to Simon Says to hula hooping. This event was a fun way to come together as a school community, step out of our comfort zones, and figure out which student knows their Disney trivia the best. We hope this game show can become a yearly event for students to enjoy. SGA has also begun working with the Community Service Club to plan Community Service Week for the end of March. During that week, numerous charity drives will be held. To gather supplies for charities such as the Fun Club, which helps refugee families, SGA is creating an Amazon wish list for people to donate supplies. Be on the lookout for an email from the PTSO at the beginning of February with a link to the wish list and more information on how you can help with Community Service Week. Also this month, over 100 WHS students traveled to Hershey, Pennsylvania to participate in the annual Model United Nations Conference. Tomorrow, students will begin taking midterm exams. With midterms comes the return of stress-relieving resources around the school. In between exam blocks, students can pet therapy dogs, watch movies, or participate in additional activities set up in the cafeterias. Clubs also take advantage of this time to hold bake sales and other fundraising events. Lastly, it is with anger and frustration that I must report that a swastika was discovered in one of the high school's bathrooms last month. 2 years ago, when swastikas were found, the community rallied together to stand up to anti-Semitism and other forms of hate. Now again, we need to send a clear message that this kind of behavior is unacceptable in Westfield. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. We'll turn it over now to board committee reports, first starting with curriculum instruction and committee, curriculum instruction assessment by committee chairperson Rob Bonaccio.
Sure. So the SIP committee has met twice since our last meeting, so this will be a relatively detailed report. We've met on December 20th, 2023, and most recently on January 8th of 24, discussing a number of items related to current and future changes to curriculum, the upcoming budget process, and responses to questions that fall within the committee's role. At the December 20th meeting, the committee received an overview of the K-12 World Languages and ESL program from the district supervisor, Enrique Pince. At each level of instruction, Mr. Pince provided an in-depth review of the standards, scope, and sequence of the curriculum, the goals and competencies it focuses on, compliance with state mandates, and an overview of AP participation and scores. That presentation is accessible on the district's website under District Communication, then Spotlight on Education, and then Information Series. So a few highlights. You can read the whole document at your leisure. The World Languages curriculum focuses on multiple modern and classical languages with instruction in Spanish beginning in elementary school. Consistent with state standards, the department is working to expand instruction in Spanish now to second grade students as early as 2025. In addition to traditional language and cultural education instruction, the district also offers language education via a Discovering Language Through Culture track, which provides an alternate source of instruction for students who may learn their languages better through cultural immersion. It's also ideal for students who enter Westfield from other districts and may need to catch up to current levels of instruction, and for some of our special needs students who may not thrive in a traditional classroom setting. World Languages also offers AP courses in each of its languages of instruction. Those results, based on the data presented to us, are significantly higher in both the number of exams taken and the scores achieved than in comparable districts. I'll add that our committee had some questions about the addition of AP Mandarin. We do offer Mandarin Chinese instruction. The supervisor reported that while we do have some students who have reached that level of study and are interested in the AP course, those numbers haven't quite gotten to the point where we're ready to break out into a full AP course to cover those students, though they do receive, students with advanced knowledge and that do receive some specialized instruction. Westfield also offers a biliteracy seal on graduate diplomas. The number of Westfield students achieving this distinction is exponentially higher than peer districts. We had last year, for example, 122 students earn the seal, and the average in peer districts was 14. Our ESL program was the next part of that presentation. That's shifting focus, and it will be rebranding itself to better reflect the outcome of the program, which is transforming students for whom English is not their first language into multilingual students, or ML students. So you'll start hearing that more as opposed to ESL. ML enrollment has doubled in the last 10 years in New Jersey, with ML learners in Westfield tripling in number since 2018. We did talk about some of the budget increases and where they were focused. Dr. Gonzalez covered that in his presentation, so I won't repeat them here. I will add, to conclude this portion, that a significant focus of the program is teaching students the language of the subjects they will be encountering in school. So the ML program doesn't simply teach you words and languages, it'll teach you, for example, the language of math and science, thereby placing the English language in context as well as syntax for these learners. Our January 8th meeting, we had a presentation from the English and Language Arts Supervisor, Liz Riley. She provided the same level of detail that Dr. Pince did. And again, her presentation also available on the district's website. Again, District Communication, Spotlight on Education, and Information Series. So some of the highlights here. In addition to fundamental skills, the curriculum focuses on core disciplines of responsibility for learning, enhancing communication competencies, building knowledge, and understanding self and others. The New Jersey state standards for ELA were recently revised, and this curriculum is undergoing a significant revision at all levels to make its goals and subjects clearer and easier for parents to digest. That was a very common theme throughout the presentation of how we're going to take this curriculum, make it more accessible to parents, and communicate more clearly with parents about what's going on, what's being taught, and how parents can be supportive of the students in their classroom. The redesign itself, as a general matter, is focused on consistency and clarity, again, as well with better communications with parents. With the additional budget funds allocated this year, again, they were significant in adding interventionists to the ELA program and classes. Again, I won't reiterate what was said there. There is a Holocaust Studies curriculum in grade 5. The professional development for that was completed in December to ensure students learn the background behind the books and articles that they're reading at a grade appropriate level. For intermediate curriculum, also being redesigned, students there are growing classroom libraries and instituting a program called First Chapter Fridays, where students will read the first chapters of books that they might be interested in. The idea there is to get them, to encourage them to read the full text. So a title you might not necessarily think is interesting to you, you'll read the first chapter of it and see maybe it is. We are also, again, expanding interventionists to combat learning loss there. There's also coming this year a second year of the Interdisciplinary Unit on Holocaust Studies, which experienced a further redesign in consult with the Kane University Diversity Council, and then some additional PD to model classroom experiences and a focus on acquiring more screening and diagnostic tools to better address and properly focus efforts to stem learning loss. And most of that is, especially at the elementary level, there are MTSS grants that the district has to at least start the acquisition of most of these tools for future tracking down the road. Finally, going to do a quick focus on the high school curriculum. That curriculum is focused on core novels and teacher-created lessons. The redesign there will again be same themes, consistency in themes and consistency in the redesign. So greater consistency, standardization, sequencing of courses, and very important, an expansion of the electives that we offer. We do have as an elective an award-winning journalism program that begins in 10th grade with the introductory courses, and students who continue on can, in their senior year, become involved with 3 nationally recognized publications. The High's Eye, which is the newspaper, also nationally recognized, Optic, the magazine, nationally recognized, and a new sports journalism program also getting national notoriety. On the horizon at the high school, the curriculum expansion we're talking about will also include student input. Again, intervention support there, and additional dual enrollment opportunities, which we highlighted in this presentation as well. For AP in the high school, 2 AP English exams, so to speak, language and comp and lit and comp. 22% of our seniors take one of those courses. 105 exams were taken in 2023. The average for language and comp is 3.99. For lit and comp is 4.24. In addition to all of this, our meetings are long. We also heard an update regarding the budget and different curricular development goals. The assistant superintendent, as I mentioned actually in an earlier comment, is revamping the budget process to better target expenses and expansion programs to keep increases minimal and manageable. Heavy focus is being placed on data management, curriculum writing, enhancing special education programs, and creating opportunities in district to minimize future out-of-district placements. Also providing additional added behavioral support. One of the significant costs in our budget is the amount it costs us to send students who have special needs out of district. And the more we can expand facilities, the more we can expand hires and programming, the more we can keep those students in district, which, money aside, is quite frankly where they belong and where they would be most comfortable learning. But it also, as an ancillary focus, it will result in the cost savings. So positive all the way around. And again, looking very closely at alternate models of scheduling at all levels. Up for approval tonight, with all that, is 2 very simple things. 2 field trips for the Westfield High School Indoor Color Guard. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 29th, 2024, and there will be one meeting to report on next time around. So thank you very much for indulging.
Thank you, Rob. Does anybody have any questions about the SIP report?
So a couple questions. With regard to the NGPA, which I believe is a new graduation requirement, and so this may be more tailored to Dr. Gonzalez, but maybe the committee can also answer this. So it appears that we do have a number of students that have not met that graduation requirement. And can you explain what is the kind of consequence or remedy of that, such that it would have, how would that affect our graduation rate, which I think historically has been quite high at 98%?
So the New Jersey graduation proficiency assessment had been implemented the past couple of years, but finally came online officially to count towards graduation this past spring. Dr. Bolton, in his presentation, I think would be able to speak to it in more detail. But in general, the ability for a student to meet the graduation assessment criteria is not just limited to the NJGPA. So they do have multiple opportunities, both the spring assessment and the October assessment or the fall assessment, but then they also have the ability to do everything from demonstrate proficiency through other assessments, whether it be passing the AccuPlacer, the SAT, the ACT, or through a portfolio process. And again, all of those are things that the administration is working on. So the guidance counselors, the department supervisors, and the high school administration are working in coordination with Dr. Bolton, as well as any special education staff who would be necessary to ensure that they get to the finish line. So ultimately, if students don't pass, obviously it does not, it would impact our graduation rate, but most importantly is we're focused on making sure that they do get to the finish line, and we'll exercise any of those alternative pathways to get them there.
And then just one other question, and again, I don't know if you all discussed this at the curriculum committee. We've had a lot of parents ask about the Holocaust and genocide curriculum, which I think we all support, including myself. And we also had some parents ask about, to what extent does the program address genocide in other parts of the world, Rohingya, Rwanda, and currently in Gaza, where we do have a genocide complaint by South Africa against Israel under the International Court of Justice right now. So are the students learning about genocide both in the past and the present as a threat to multiple vulnerable populations? And is that something that, or is it just genocide as it applies to the Holocaust?
Holocaust genocide studies is mandated by the state and includes more than just the Holocaust, but it does include learnings and experiences, across the globe and across history. So how contemporary that is, I think, would be the responsibility of the teachers working with the administration to ensure that it's appropriately aligned to our curriculum. So the state mandates the standards in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Can I address that just a little bit also? So I was thinking about this earlier today, and I spoke with my kids. I just wanted to get a sense of what, I can read the curriculum, but I'm not in the classroom, and I wanted to see, what's been going on there. And both of my freshmen in 2 different English classes read, and I'm going to say this wrong, but Persepolis, is that right? Am I saying it correctly? This year, which has to do with Islamophobia and the Muslim community. And I know that was in English, and then also in social studies, the Aboriginals and the genocide there, and Australia, and all of those things were discussed as well. So I do think that across the board, throughout the grades and the disciplines, I think that that at least my freshmen felt like they were getting a glimpse of very diverse experiences. My older daughter only has negative things to say, so I don't listen to her. But the twins did both say this.
Thank you. I'm asking this for obvious reasons, because the point of genocide studies is to prevent genocide from happening again and learning from the past.
Okay. Thank you. Can we have the report by Finance and Facilities Committee? Brendan or Kent?
Absolutely. The Finance and Facilities Committee met Friday morning for about 2.5 hours. It was one of our longer meetings, but we covered 11 very different and important topics. Kristen, you're lucky you got to miss that one. I'll start with the easy ones that have already been covered tonight. We had our audit report showing no findings or recommendations, which is the best score that a district can get from an audit report. Capital reserve account closed out for the year with a balance of $9.8 million, of which we took $5.8 million and immediately used it to pay for Roosevelt. So we are back to about where we started the previous year with about $4 million in our capital account. For a district our size, that's both good and bad. If you look around, we have capital needs that far exceed that. Our maintenance reserve account is at 2.09 million. Although we're going to be spending about $600,000 of that in the current budget year on various maintenance projects throughout the district. To our budget review. So before we started previewing the next year's budget, we figured out where we are with our current budget. It's almost a standing line item here. The special ed and transportation are much higher than we anticipated, and the costs continue to rise. Although health benefits are doing okay right now. We're monitoring prescription costs. They're up higher than we expected. But overall, we're looking at about a 7% increase. The state plan is anticipating a 7% increase, so we don't expect waivers for healthcare to the 2% cap like we have in previous years. Our interest revenue from investments continue to exceed budget expectations because we put that at almost zero, so everything is gravy. Moving into our budget preview, Dr. Gonzalez opened by explaining Senate Bill 4209, which eliminated the double vote. We discussed the pros and cons in that. Obviously, it's better and simpler for the voters to have one question to vote on. It makes it easier for us to sell it. Overall, the consensus was that it would have been nicer if it was a single budget line item of $125 million instead of a budget that we vote on and then a separate question that goes to the voters. Again, it would just to make things simpler. The fact that the legislature addressed it at all is amazing, and the governor signed it is remarkable. I don't expect them making our changes, so the fact that they've passed a new law for about 10 districts, Westfield being one of those 10 that has an April election with a budget vote, means somebody is listening to us or somebody else that has similar problems. Although as more districts move to an April election, this may impact more districts. We spent a lot of time talking about our 24-25 budget tonight. I'll just highlight that we discussed where we can increase and where we practically can increase, where we'd like to see the district eventually get, and what the limitations are. We all have ideas for programs that we'd love to see happen, whether it's full-day kindergarten or STEM labs or expanded industrial arts at the elementary, middle school. Everybody has a pet project that they'd like to see happen. We have almost zero space for any of it. So that's really the limit. And as we we've been talking about the idea of a referendum for a long time, and that we can grow, although we have to maintain at the same time. We could get a referendum out to the voters next week, but it's going to be 3 years before those classroom spaces are open to students. So to grow in that 3-year time period, there are things that we've asked the administration to come up with ways we can expand student offerings without space, so that when we have the space, we have a budget that allows us to shift and reallocate to utilize that space. Small increases now will minimize a bigger increase once the space opens up, because we will have to hire teachers to fill any new classrooms we have. So the end result from that discussion was that we directed the administration to look at what we can do internally with the idea of going a little bit above and beyond the 2% that they're forecasting. Not saying we're going to approve any budget like that, but we have to talk about where we can use resources next year in the space we have. So the administration will come back to us with recommendations at our next meeting. We then quickly looked at a draft study from our architect. Architect inspected every building with us, walked every classroom and measured everything, took pictures of every classroom for current status. We received that report Friday morning. It's a 50-page report. We'll discuss it at our next meeting, but we do have a draft report that's available on the board portal for board members to review. In the fall, we contracted out with a firm called Advocate to review our custodial and maintenance services. And they came up with a number of recommendations for us, and some which we can do this year, some which we can't do. But we'll be recommending that we add an assistant supervisor of building and grounds, in addition to 2 maintenance and groundskeepers. We're also looking to work with the association to shift the maintenance schedules to begin so that our maintenance workers start an hour earlier every day before school start, allowing work to actually happen in the classrooms if repairs are needed without disruptions to the students. We're looking at streamlining our maintenance and operating procedures for various systems throughout the district, and eliminating the energy stipend for custodial coordinators. Neither of those are in the association's contract. Moving into a referendum conversation, we reviewed our demographic study, looking at development in town and where shifts in enrollment are projected to take place over the next couple of years. Our demographer has factored in the construction of 562 new apartments recently and in the next couple of years that will not be age-restricted units. And he believes that those apartments will account for 190 students in grades K through 12. In anticipation of the conversation around full-day kindergarten, we've been directed to plan for at least 510 students per grade going forward. So if we're going to build a full-day kindergarten, we need to plan for 510 kindergartners. More on that will occur in our February committee meeting. Moving into, sorry, I lost my place. I was scrolling around. We also had a presentation from Dr. Gonzalez on a tool that he has purchased for the district called Thought Exchange. It's a interactive survey tool that we plan to recruit a group of a cross-section of the community. We haven't decided on the exact numbers, and the numbers may change based on whatever we're asking for. But really, it's to help us steer a referendum as we work through iterations. So we'll reach out to our parents, community groups, and really we want to hear from opponents of any construction. We want to hear all voices so that we have an idea of what to expect if we go to a referendum. Dissenting voices are important in our process, and we want to hear from everybody. Thought Exchange allows people to, if we said, if we reached out to 300 people and asked them what their priority for the district was, I might say we need better facilities. Kristen might say, I'd love to see more art in the elementary schools. And Rob will have a completely different opinion. Thought Exchange allows people to then go back through and rate other people's responses. So if we see that, of the 300 people that responded, 200 also liked Kristen's answer of more art in the elementary schools, then that would help steer our conversations going forward. So it's not just you respond and move on. It'll be an interactive process going forward. It also incorporates AI to help aggregate similar answers so that we're not looking at art in the elementary schools, music in the elementary schools. It would combine it into an art and music thing and help aggregate the data to help us best understand what the community wants, expediting any process and results that come from a survey. So we anticipate using that for a referendum, budget building in the future, as well as any other issues that we feel may be necessary community-wide. We can use it for school climate surveys internally with our students and staff. And yeah, it's a tool to solicit immediate feedback and hopefully take action on it. And lastly, our wonderful Roosevelt facade project. The decorative panels are being installed. 2 of them were broken. They also happen to be the only 2 of their kind, so we had to go back to the manufacturer to have more made. They'll be at least 3 weeks, weather dependent, before they can be installed. Parts of the facade, the brick is being repointed due to the cold weather. That has to wait till March. And we're in discussions with the contractor about whether they want to continue through the winter to do other parts of that project, and then hopefully complete phase 2 and 3 next summer. The contractor didn't use the correct sub for the roofing repairs, so they have to redo it per the company that we have warranty with. Waiting to schedule this due to the weather. It's in a holding pattern. And other roofing issues include Edison and Tamaqua. We're working with our architects, roofing company executives, and contractors to repair. We've also brought in an outside roofer to look at Edison. We did this at our own expense. He has some investigative work to do. We have received $22,000 from the New Jersey School Insurance Group for damage to the ceiling in the Edison Auditorium, and we have a contractor ready to remake the repairs. We're just waiting on a permanent fix to the roofing issues before we fix the ceiling. We're also waiting on a warranty report for the roof at WHS due to statewide weather issues. Every roofing contractor that does work on schools is backlogged. And that's where we're at. Tonight on the agenda, finance item A is the audit report. Items J are donations of we want to thank the YMCA of Westfield for their donation of $1,335 to cover the cost of a nurse and substitute for the WHS Model UN trip in January. Thank the WHS PTO or PTSO for $423 to purchase a chair, which will be awarded to a teacher at the senior awards night. Again, the WHS PTSO for $500 to fund a David Good presentation for WHS students. And under item I, we have $42,000 for boiler repairs at Washington School. About 10 years ago, we replaced many of the boilers district-wide. Washington's was not old enough to be replaced, so now it has to have some substantial repairs, but we'll extend its life. And then $20,000 to remove solar panels from our schools so that they can repair the roofs. I know I threw a lot of various information out there, and I didn't pause for questions along the way, so if anybody has any questions, ask now.
Thank you, Brendan. Go ahead, Kristen.
I'm just wondering, you said there's going to be 510 kindergartners that we have to account for if we do a referendum. How does that compare to our current numbers?
Our current numbers are, we have about 300, rough, give or take, by a lot. Half-day kindergartners. We found that less than half of our first grade class, or sorry, just about half of our first grade class attends half-day kindergarten. Most will find a full-day alternative somewhere else. Okay. So we're basing our full-day numbers on first grade numbers.
Got it. Okay.
Because we anticipate it may not happen the first year,
yeah,
but within a couple of years, we imagine that almost everybody will come in district for kindergarten. And it's better to have the space built once than get there and then a couple of years later have to add classrooms on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then also Thought Exchange. So is that essentially kind of like a large online focus group?
Yeah, it's a community engagement platform. I think that's probably the great way to describe it because it does allow for that engagement to take place between members and participants in the exchange. Whereas a survey would just gather, one-way information, this allows for that interactivity to take place, and with a larger outreach so that we are able to include as many people in the community as possible,
And when do we foresee utilizing that?
as soon as possible.
Oh, so we already own whatever we had. Okay, and what cost was that to the district?
I don't have that
Okay.
readily available, but
Oh,
it's...
you have it? Oh,
It was
nice.
$18,000 for the rest of this school year and $34,000 for next school year.
Okay.
And we're not the only district that's using it. Madison, Ridgewood, and Wayne also use this as well.
Okay. So will we be using this for this budget too?
We're going to be using it for everything that we can for that, for that amount.
It's very cool. Okay.
The cost is comparable to one townwide survey, if we were to mail out postcards and ask people to respond.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, Sahar?
I have a question. So, one, I have a follow-up to your question, because that's really intriguing. What is in place in this technology that will make engagement constructive? I think all of us know that sometimes electronic engagement causes people to behave poorly in ways that perhaps they wouldn't do in person, or perhaps not in a survey, but based on what we've seen in social media and other trends. I assume that there's a way to make it constructive, or is that a
So I had a similar
hazard?
question during the presentation. When you're commenting, or when you're responding to another response, it's a star-based rating system. It's not a comment thread. And that immediately removes any sort of back and forth or inflammatory responses.
Or slander or defamation?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, great. That's good, because it'll make it more constructive. So I have another clarifying question based on what Kristen asked. So how many first graders do we have right now? What's our class size?
About 480, if I'm correct, Dr. Gonzalez? An approximate number, it's about 480 approximately.
I
So-
believe it's somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, with the building of the new apartments, it looks like the increase is only about 30 students. Because you said that we
No.
have approximately 500 kindergartners for a full-day kindergarten?
We'll have approximately 190 in K to 12, which works out to 14 per grade. But we've also had bubble years. We've had as many as 550 graduating seniors, and we've had as few as 475.
I'm sorry, I think the question you're asking
Yeah.
is what's the doubling of the number? Around half of the kindergarten population pays privately for full-day kindergarten, and the assumption is that if there's a full-day kindergarten option through Westfield, which will be free, that it would come back, that the students would come back.
Okay, but my point is, those new apartments are not the cause of this big number. The first graders are kind of our baseline.
Correct.
Okay.
The new apartments would increase across K-12.
190.
They would, yeah, they wouldn't
not
be
the
just
okay.
kindergarten, it could be anywhere. So
Okay.
we wouldn't know until an apartment actually opened if it would generate that number and where that number would be. Because people could all move in with all ninth graders, or, it could be spread across the district pretty evenly.
So factoring in the number of students we've lost at the start of COVID and who's come back, that addition of about 190 puts us approximately where we were pre-COVID in terms of K to 12 distribution. Although if we add kindergarten, obviously those numbers are going to go up. So our enrollment should go up about 200 students if we add full-day kindergarten.
So my question is related to the demographic study, but also something I brought up before. As part of this demographic study and part of the facilities study and walkthrough, as we know, our special education budget is a significant percentage of our budget. And one way that one presumably could follow Rob's suggestion of finding ways to save costs is to, how do you keep some of our students in district so that we're not paying other districts or private schools for services that maybe we could provide for some students? And I understand it's not all of them because it's highly individualized. But how can we get a sense of some kind of analysis of, there are certain types of special education services which we find there's a high need for, such that it would justify building additional space that would go into the voting referendum, and then that money savings from not having to send kids in district and possibly bringing kids in district because we had the specialized service would then pay off some of that building cost over the long run. How do we get that analysis?
So that analysis is being conducted by special services as well as the rest of the administration. It's one of the three real prongs we're looking at for a referendum. Bringing special ed back in district, offering new programs or enhanced programs in district, general maintenance and upgrades. There is a laundry list of needs, be it cosmetic, systems, or just state of good repair that needs to happen. And then full day kindergarten. So sorry, four main prongs we've been approaching this referendum with, but special ed being one of the key drivers of what we can do.
So when will that be done? Everything you just discussed?
An exact answer?
Around when?
We plan to discuss with our architect at our February meeting, and probably March we'll have a better idea. Yep.
Okay, I'd like to turn it over to Layla for a report for a Policies, Personnel, and Governance Committee.
Thank you. PPG met on the 9th. We started our discussion with Regulation 5751, which is sexual harassment of students. This was presented at last month's PPG meeting and was approved for first reading at our last board meeting on the 19th. We revisited it during this meeting because we had to choose between two options. You had to check one or the other, made by the decision maker upon receipt of the report. The committee selected the option, the preponderance of evidence standard, as this measure is interpreted as most likely, looks like, rather than clear and convincing evidence standard. And this will be up for our first reading tonight with that option applied. We then looked at policy 5520, disorder and demonstration, and this policy was reviewed due to concern expressed regarding language. This policy was created in 1992, and most other similar districts have this policy in place. The committee found that the language using the word "and" students will not be disturbed in the exercise of their constitutionally guaranteed rights to assemble peaceably and to express ideas and opinions, private or publicly, provided that their activities do not infringe on the rights of others and do not interfere with the operation of the educational program. We also discussed that this policy does not replace the code of conduct. We discussed the conduct of board meetings as well, as we had a huge discussion about this at the last board meeting. This is 0167. Regarding public comment periods, the general consensus was not to diminish the opportunities for the public to speak. Suggestions moving forward include, as a courtesy, allowing current staff and students of Westfield Public School to speak first. To clarify, action versus non-action items for first public comment section, an action item column will be added to the first public comment sign-in sheet, and this will be enforced by the board without exception. If someone is not speaking on an action item at the first public comment section, they will be asked to stop speaking. This will be enforced. 0168, recording board meetings, was also discussed. When someone speaks at the podium, they're being recorded by the district. We want to allow families to video their children playing instruments and getting awards, etc. If the behaviors of participants, members of the public or the board, disrupt the operation of the meeting and interferes with the business of the board, the president will intervene as needed, including a verbal warning, recess, stopping recording for everyone, removal of participants, and adjourning the meeting. Concerning behaviors included but not limited to recording in a disruptive or interfering way, addressing the audience, heckling, will be addressed by the president, as management of the board meeting needs to be guided by the principles of decorum, safety, and efficiency. In terms of governance, We had a board training update. Patty Reese confirmed that she will be here on February 13 to discuss referendum and on April 30th to discuss ethics. It was suggested that parliamentary procedures training be held in August, as new board members would be present at that time. There is no action at this time. However, the committee is recommending that we add a section to the board handbook about training. We continued our discussion regarding potential changes to the school calendar, and the committee is recommending that the SIP committee discuss the proposed changes so we get more input. Our next meeting is February 1st.
Thank you, Layla. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Brendan?
Layla, can you expand on the decision to go with the preponderance of evidence versus clear and convincing evidence? A lowering of the standard shouldn't come without discussion.
Sure, I can do my best, but when someone, for example, if a HIB is filed and the person in charge of making the decision is handed a report, you have to determine the two options. One is that there is clear and convincing evidence that this happened, or the other is that the evidence shows that this is very likely and it looks like this did happen. And so to err on the side of caution, the preponderance was determined the checkpoint.
Okay. And are these in regards to matters that may be referred to law enforcement or purely internal? Because it's the sexual harassment of students. So it's a serious topic. And
Right, which is why if it was likely to happen, we want that to be the one that we're checking and judging based on, as opposed to it's definite.
okay.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I just want to add that. So generally, the preponderance of the evidence means it's more likely than not, which is about anything over 50%, right? Clear and convincing is less than beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's somewhere, if you had to guess, in the 75 percentile. So effectively what this is if people, whoever the decision maker believes that it is more than half, more than 50% likely that this allegation is true, then that would be whatever the consequence is. So what is I'm agnostic at this point, but what's the basis for lowering it? Is there a practical reason?
Yeah, I could speak to it. Again, administratively, because these are the investigations that are conducted either by administrators, by our Title IX coordinator, or, as it relates to any student matter, we recognize that the clear and convincing threshold is often an unachievable threshold, and as a result, it represents a more difficult standard for us to attain and be able to act upon. So as a matter of practice, our investigations have generally relied on the preponderance of evidence for discipline matters, for HIB matters. So we'd be looking to maintain the same standard for investigation purposes in this case as well. To the question regarding law enforcement, if there was any instance where the matter crossed into the threshold of potentially criminal or mandatorily requiring a report to the police, it would be done so, and then their investigation would dictate the pace and timing of ours. So we may have to suspend our investigation while they conduct theirs, but they would, in essence, work in tandem and in coordination with one another. So really, the administrative recommendation, again, I originally, when it was presented in December, had presented the incorrect option. So this was recognizing that we wanted to make sure that the proper administrative recommendation was reflected, but given the substantial change, this would require that we put it back to a first reading rather than just say, it's just a minor change and we're just going to move it to second reading. So that's the reason why we re-presented it and added for discussion.
Go ahead, CJ.
Well, and Sahar, do you want to continue with 5520, or do you want me to? I can start, okay, yeah. So I wanted to follow up on 5520 as well. We did have a very robust discussion about the initial paragraph. I think a gentleman had brought up in public comment the month before the idea that the proviso in that first paragraph was a little troubling to him. I think based on Layla's read of the report tonight and based on our discussion, we were comfortable there that the "and" was less of a conjunction of two different things and more of a, kind of a continuous concept, or at least that's how I took it. That, infringing on the rights of others and interfering with the operation of the educational program was kind of a continuum, and so that the decision could be made. It wasn't just a stark, conjunction. But, in considering the policy more, at least from my own perspective, I found that the writing of the second paragraph in particular was quite troubling. Unlike, say, the R5751, where you'd want a lower standard to assist the administration in doing their investigation and coming up with appropriate consequences to the investigation. Here, I think you want to raise the standard, and I think you want to have a carefully drafted policy that restricts the enforcer of the regulation as much as it affects the students and staff. And here in particular, I find it a little troubling, the language. Any of the language pertaining to stopping or interfering with the proper operation of the educational program or the school itself, I appreciate, and I wouldn't want to see disruption there. But where we're talking about the exercise of First Amendment rights and constitutionally protected rights by students, I find it troubling, number one, that, we're putting in a list of restrictions, some items that are clearly not protected speech. Obscenity is not protected, commercial speech is not protected, so those things are clearly something that can be restricted without affecting a student's rights. But some of them are a little more troubling, and for instance, advocating the violation of law, for instance. To me, that would be a quintessential counterpart to acting in civil disobedience, right? That you can have a fundamental disagreement with a law. Or a school rule for that matter, and you should have the means to assemble and express your opinions accordingly. Again, not disrupting the school, but otherwise, just by virtue of itself, expressing a desire to advocate for the violation of law in a civilly disobedient fashion, as a for instance, to me would be the highlight, would be the quintessence of actual, of engaging in free speech, and I think we want to encourage our students to do that. Some of these other things as well, I know there's an intent to why they're drafted the way they are, but at least in my lawyer's brain, I can see interpretations that are very frustrating. Another one would be, advocating the use of force. Nobody wants to advocate the use of force, on school grounds, for instance. But if I generally advocate the use of force, say, in one nation state protecting itself from another, as a for instance, well, it depends on the reviewer of the claim, how they feel about that. So I think, again, I know this is standard language, and I think we really need to take a think about it. I don't think it's written with enough clarity to really kind of enforce to help restrict the enforcer. I want to hear what other people think about that as well, but those are my thoughts.
Go ahead, Layla.
So it's up for second read. You can have your opinions, you can have your beliefs, we can definitely have a discussion. I wish some of this would have been brought up prior to the board table, because then we could have maybe drafted something or sent something out for the rest of the board members to look at. But one of the things that I just want to say, and again, this is not, I don't disagree with much of what you're saying, but what I do want to say is that you can have free speech that creates a hostile environment, and that is not acceptable. And there is a line that, when it's crossed, is not something that is allowed in a school setting, and I think that this policy is appropriate for that. That's just my 2 cents.
And I appreciate the point you're making about timing. You know, it's taken me a while to really think about this and really kind of work through the consequences, you know, of the language as it is. You know, I agree with you. A hostile environment is not good, where it interferes with the proper functioning of the school. I really think we want to think through, where feelings of discomfort by themselves are the consequence of language, are the consequence of, meeting. Again, for instance, I just hearken back to the idea that I think people are capable of holding two different things in their hand at the same time. We can tolerate ambiguity. We can learn how to tolerate handling that. And so I just want to I know this isn't a later read, but just based on my thinking about it, I really think it's important for everybody to think through the consequences of that as well. That's all.
Does anybody want to respond about policy 5520? Okay, Sahar.
Okay. So I appreciate this conversation. I think it's really important. This country was founded on dissent, revolution, and what the British called terrorists, but what the Americans call freedom fighters. So I think there's a reason why the First Amendment of our Constitution and every state constitution highlights the right to free speech, and we want our students to be able to exercise that, obviously within limits, and schools are not the same as public spaces or private commercial spaces. And so I think what CJ is highlighting is just the need to go back to the table and add some language that ensures that we are not effectively dissuading or discouraging our students from exercising their free speech rights, when usually that is needs the most protection when it is a minority view, and when it is something that is not in mainstream. So, for example, advocates for the use of imminent force, right? Because that's usually it's about the imminence of the force rather than a general threat that is abstract or far in the future. Advocates for the violation of imminent violation of law or school rules, which would presumably, that could be interpreted as disruption as opposed to a general advocation or opposition to a particular school rule or law. I mean, there are probably some students who completely oppose the state laws right now that are being passed that either prohibit or restrain abortion, and they may oppose that, right, and advocate for violation of those rules as part of their speech. I mean, we're just giving some examples. So I think that it's worth going back to the table and talking to council, frankly, to make sure that we can word it correctly. I have another issue which I did bring up before. I did, which is the language that says the board specifically prohibits any assembly or expression that materially disrupts instruction, is obscene, slanderous, or grossly prejudicial. I've been trying to figure out what the definition of grossly prejudicial is, because it's very vague and can be subjective. So here's some hypotheticals. What if a group of students hosts a pro-Israel event that chants, "We stand with Israel," which our Palestinian and Arab students may find grossly prejudicial toward them? What if there's a group of students that hosts an event or some kind of program or some free speech event, or political expression event, supportive of Palestinian self-determination, during which they chant "Free Palestine," which our Jewish students may find grossly prejudicial towards them? So the phrase is, and we can use it against other, things that may offend or find that LGBTQ communities may find grossly prejudicial, or racial minorities may find, or et cetera. You see the point. So the phrase is just too vague, because I'd like to know if anybody here knows what grossly prejudicial means, whereas with obscene and slanderous, we have case law, we have I mean, slander is clear. It's a false statement about a person and there is harm that is caused. But with grossly prejudicial, I cannot find that definition. So I don't think that's good policy. I know that this is the standard that has been used by this company that we hired, but CJ and I appreciate this, and Rob probably as well, just by our legal training, is that doesn't mean we have to adopt it. I mean, we can still be thoughtful about what language we want to apply to our district in order to ensure that our students are not being forced into some conformist mold, but allowed to act on their critical thinking and dissent, obviously within the boundaries that do not disrupt. And I understand your concerns with a hostile environment. The reality is that, and you and I both know this, there's somebody's speech that they believe is to protect their community could be interpreted by another community as very hostile. And so then there's no speech.
No.
Well, so this is where perhaps we disagree. I am more speech protective.
I'm not saying that there's no speech. I'm saying that I think that this policy is encouraging free speech within the limits of what is deemed appropriate, and we also will be including the code of conduct, obviously, as administration will be doing that as a supervising body. I understand what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree that this is an anti-free speech policy. I'm not reading it that way.
I think it does.
But that's me.
Well, I don't think it's anti-free speech, it just restrains it. But I guess the point is, what does grossly prejudicial mean? I would really like to know what that means.
Can I just make a suggestion here? I think we all have a lot of good ideas. I don't disagree that it probably needs some more review. Can we send this back to policy? My understanding, and I don't know this for certain, but on the bottom of each policy, there's a series of laws that are reviewed. So why don't we have policy review those laws? Because I don't know exactly what all of these laws state, but I do know that the policies essentially summarize these laws. And so maybe somewhere in this law, it further defines, what kind of, I don't know, like restrictions, higher restrictions that schools can have, or maybe it doesn't define it. Maybe it defines what you're looking for. So I think we need to send this back to the table and have it further looked at.
Do you want to make a motion?
I don't know, is that how I do it? I don't.
We're not voting.
We're not voting, yeah.
Okay, so then I'm going to move on to recognizing the public, which is all your different comments and input from everybody for us to think about when we get to the agenda items. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the public on agenda action items only. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only. The board requests that individuals sign in and state their name, municipality of residence, and group affiliation, if applicable, for the record, the specific action items they are commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered.
Whoever wants to.
Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. In light of the feedback received during the new business discussion at last month's meeting, subsequent emails we received from members of the public, and input from the Board Policy, Personnel, and Governance Committee, we are making the following adjustments to public comment. During regular meetings, we will maintain separate public comment periods for agenda items only and any items, so we will keep to 2 public comment sections. A new electronic sign-in sheet will be implemented to improve the legibility of the speaker's name, municipality, and the specific agenda item referenced during the first comment period. A Chromebook is set up at the table over there on the side near the podium with the Google form preloaded, which should be self-explanatory and is very brief. You will be prompted to choose first or second public comment, depending on which time you go up there. Please note that if participating in the first public comment period for agenda action items only, you will be asked to select the action item section. For example, personnel, finance and facilities, etc., and to input the action item letter under that section which you are addressing. Upon sign-in, a spreadsheet will be updated real time. To support the efficiency of the meeting agenda, as board president, I will monitor and enforce the comments during the first comment period to make sure they are limited to comments directly related to a current action item. As a courtesy, we invite Westfield students or staff to speak first. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration.
Ravi Talfaro from Westfield. I would like to address the disturbance and demonstration policy. Just want to clarify, this is a policy for elementary, intermediate, and high school students, correct? So I'm actually just having a problem understanding why these kinds of demonstrations belong in school in the first place. I think our children are there to learn. You know, I know that there's a lot of academic deficiencies after COVID. I don't understand why demonstrations that may offend other children should belong in school. If a pro-Israel rally is going to be offensive to Palestinian students, then we should not be having pro-Israel rallies in school. If a Free Palestine rally is going to be offensive to Jewish students, then you shouldn't have those rallies in school. The same thing goes for pro-life, pro-abortion. This is an environment that we want our children to feel safe in. I don't even understand why this is a discussion for them to be allowed to protest in school. We're not talking about universities, we're not talking about graduate schools, we're talking about elementary, intermediate, and high school students, all under the age of 18 mostly. Correct? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm also talking about the policy for disorder and demonstration.
Can you please state your name?
Sorry. I thought signing the form.
No, thank you.
Scott Kessler from Westfield. The disorder and demonstration policy that we spoke about at the last meeting, when I looked at it this afternoon, it appeared to be exactly the same as the way it was presented last month when I had asked questions about the use of the word "and" in the first paragraph and then the use of the word "or" in the second paragraph. I believe that that was touched upon but not really addressed. Again, as the last speaker said, this is for speech conducted on school property during the educational program. So again, I agree with the last speaker. I don't see why this is controversial, why there should be demonstrations going on during the educational program during class time on school property. Though it's hard for me to say this, I agree with some of the comments from the board earlier about the ambiguity of some of the language used in the policy and who is the arbiter of what runs afoul of this policy and how that's decided and what rights a student has who's accused of violating this policy. And I think those are things that we really need to consider and that they should be addressed in the policy so we have a fair ability to judge whether or not there is improper speech. Free speech is not absolute, as we all know and we recognize, and especially on a school property, right? There are rights that educators have that normal citizens don't have over students, and that applies to speech as well. And so we shouldn't be afraid to make sure that our schools are safe environments for our children to learn, and that they don't feel that they're being threatened or intimidated by people who are engaging in action, whether it's speech, whether it's physical contact. I don't think it needs to be an imminent threat. I think that any threat should be considered under this policy. I'm not sure what makes something an imminent threat based on speech in a school, and that certainly shouldn't be going on in any school, let alone Westfield schools. Thank you.
Kyle George. I'm speaking on Governance A and Policies B. Regarding Governance A, there are a lot of HIBs on the agenda tonight, resolution approval, 18 of them. That sure seems like a lot. Without getting specific about student details or demographics, I think the public deserves to know the nature of these HIB incidents when they're on the agenda. For example, how many of the HIBs on tonight's agenda are for swastikas in our schools? We'd like to know. We know that there was yet another swastika found in Westfield High School recently. What was the resolution of that case, and is it on tonight's agenda? Regarding Policies B, there's a second reading for new policy 5520, disorder and demonstration. It seems like a good policy overall. Students do not have the right to disrupt learning during school hours with their TikTok-inspired antics like walkouts. Schools are for learning, and these are disruptive. I have a few questions about it, though, about how it would be implemented. And a couple example scenarios, what you would do. I want to know what you would do. Would 5520 disorder and demonstration prevent an organization like SJP, which I think would fit under the grossly prejudicial provision, quote unquote, from demonstrating on school grounds? And if there was a student chapter of SJP, how would you respond under this policy? The reason I'm asking is because I'm concerned about SJP's ideology coming to Westfield Public Schools, because BOE member Sahara Aziz supports SJP, at least according to her interviews and social media posts. SJP was briefly suspended from Rutgers University, where she teaches, and she recently spoke in support of their return. Videos posted online after they were reinstated are full of mass speakers. And the content is appalling, and I feel sorry for Jewish Rutgers students who are surrounded by that hate.
Excuse me, Mr. George, can you please keep this to policy 5520?
I am, right now.
I think you're getting off topic here.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. This is a real threat.
We're focused on Westfield School District.
While SJP chapters don't usually operate in high schools, if it were to happen, I want to know how you would respond under this policy.
Yeah, right.
This is a very relevant question, and I think I've tied it together nicely right there. I'd like a chance to finish.
It's nothing but an ad hominem attack against
This is not relevant to our
It absolutely is.
of this policy 5520, which relates to our students.
It's about demonstrate. It's entitled disorder and demonstration. What if there was a demonstration?
Correct, Mr.
At
George.
Westfield High School, like we've seen at Rutgers recently. What would the district do under this policy? I hope it would take action, and that's why I support this policy.
Would you like to use a different university example?
Thank you, Mr. Okay, at this time, I'd like to close public comment, and I'd like to approve the minutes from December 19th, 2023, regular board meeting minutes. Can I have a second? Thank you, Kristen. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, at this time, we'll move on to board action items. Rob, for governance?
Sure, I'd like to move board action item A under governance for approval. Do I have a second? Second. Kent? And now move to discussion. Anyone have any questions? Sorry.
Okay, can we have a vote, Patty?
I'm sorry, you're doing governance item A, B, and C? Is that right?
There's only A.
There's only A. Why am I on the wrong?
Patty, can we have a roll call?
Sahara Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Gelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to, Mary, if you'd like to move personnel items?
Yes, I'd like to move items A through V under the personnel section of tonight's agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brendan. Does anybody have any questions for personnel? Are there any retirements? Ray, sorry, thank you.
Yes, this evening we do have one employee who is retiring that we would like to recognize. Deborah Poluzny, thank you, began her career in the Westfield Public Schools in December of 1994 in the Department of Special Services. And her career as a speech therapist has been defined by dedication, commitment, and a profound impact on our students. She's demonstrated an exceptional skill and proficiency, setting a standard of excellence in speech therapy. Her innovative approaches have positively influenced countless students, and beyond professional achievement, she has cultivated positive rapport with students, staff, and parents. Her kindness, genuine concern created a supportive community within our school, and we extend our heartfelt congratulations and thanks for her outstanding contributions and wish her a happy and healthy retirement.
I just wanted to add to that, Miss P, as her students say, because they can't say that, really was a gift at Lincoln, and I think that it's rare to have someone work with kids who understands the gray kids, the kids that aren't as clear. And I think she did a wonderful job with everyone and with the families, and I wish her the best of luck.
Thank you. Patty, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Delinas,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Okay, Finance and Facilities, Kent?
Yes, I'd like to move items A through L under the finance section of tonight's agenda. May I have a second, please? Brendan. Any questions?
Patty, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Delinas,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Action items, agenda items under policies, Leila?
I'd like to move items A and B under the policy section of tonight's agenda. Is there a second? Second, Sonal? Any,
Wait, how does it work if I want to make a motion to send 5520 back?
no.
Second.
Wait, don't I have to make the motion? Oh, okay. So I make a motion to send 5520 back to policy.
Table it, yeah. Table it.
Well, I want to send it back to policy. That's
To
actually a
table.
better,
It's the same thing.
it's not so much tabling it, right, as sending it back? Or okay, whatever. That's how I should say it? Okay, I would like to make a motion to table 5520 and send it back to policy.
Second.
Patty, do we vote on that motion? Okay.
Yes, we'll vote on that, and then the motion to add that to table it. Correct? If it passes. Yeah, if it passes, then it's tabled.
Okay.
Sahar Aziz,
I'm going to need you to
Yes.
explain
Wait,
again
so
what we're
we're-
voting for.
so you're voting right now to table it,
Okay.
Just 55.
just 5520. Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
No.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
No.
Charles Delinas,
Yes.
Leila Morelli,
No.
Sonal Patel,
No.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
So you have 5 yes. So the motion passes, so it's tabled.
Okay.
Tabled and referred back to committee, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have to do a separate referral.
What about,
So now we vote on
Now you would move just item
A. And what about
No.
And B1,
B
and
and
B2.
B2.
2?
Yep.
okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve A and B1 under the policy.
B2.
B2.
I'm sorry, B2, under the policy portion of the agenda.
Second.
Can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccia,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
No on A, yes on B.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
Okay, curriculum instruction and assessment, Rob?
Sure, I'd like to move item A under the curriculum instruction and assessment agenda. Do I have a second? Second. Kent, any questions? Seeing none?
Patty, can we have a vote?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccia,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Charles Jelinas,
Yes.
Layla Morelli, Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic-Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Yes.
I'd like to acknowledge the notes for the record and move on to unfinished business, new business, liaison reports. Go ahead, Rob.
Sure, I attended the high school PTSO meeting on January 11th. Casey does a great job going through most of the information that goes on there with all the events that the PTSO supports. The one thing I would add to that is the PTSO is also looking for, with respect to the support for students during midterms, they are looking for volunteers to help out. So if you are able to help out and manage some of these things during the course of midterms, please do reach out to the PTSO presidents. I also want to recognize that most of the group on the PTSO was also concerned as a general matter for health and well-being of students, how students are handling and coping with midterms as a general matter. These events are very nice, but to the extent that students are having, more serious concerns about what's going on with midterms that can't necessarily be resolved by a dog or a movie, they wanted to ensure that counseling services and such were readily available for students, number one. And number two, that as students come up through the elementary and intermediate school ranks, that we're providing student support for what's coming in high school. Not just, the first time you see this level of midterm and exam is not in high school. So that's something that I'll be taking back to our counseling department. I know they're generally there anyway, but I think it's certainly something thoughtful and something to think about. So certainly if your students are having trouble, please do not hesitate to reach out to school counselors and seek any of the help. These are just tests. I understand they're important. I understand what we've got here going on in Westfield, and we take our academics seriously. But, mental health is equally important as well, and we need to find right balance and perspective. And any way we can help that out, we should be doing as a district. And it's good to see parents speaking up for that. So just keep that in mind and know that it was brought up, and I'm going to bring it up, on behalf of them with counseling.
Thank you, Rob. Any other liaison reports? Okay, then at this time, I'd like to recognize the public for comments. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals sign in and state their name, municipality of residence, and group affiliation, if applicable, for the record, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. We will continue to use the online sign-in at this time, and as a courtesy, I invite Westfield students and staff to the podium first. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration.
Hello.
Wait, can you hear me? Okay. Janice Rappaport, Westfield. I just want to make a comment on the strategic plan about dual enrollment. I currently have a sophomore at the high school, and I have two daughters who graduated. And I think continuing to build the dual enrollment course opportunities at Westfield High School is amazing. And I'm hoping, though, as this grows, that there's also consideration to have these classes weighted in a student's GPA. Like an honors or an AP class is weighted at the GPA. Since it's a college level class, I imagine it's going to be extra challenging. And, as someone's trying to build their course schedule, some people are going to pick an AP class just so they could have the weighted grade, assuming they're going to get an A in the AP class versus a dual enrollment. Many kids are not going to pick the dual enrollment just because they're trying to manage their GPA. I quickly looked on the internet. It does seem that we might be able to do that other high schools do that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Also, I want to thank the policy committee for clarifying appropriate and acceptable behavior at the Board of Education meetings. I think that's really great, so thank you.
Lindsay Betzalel, Westfield. On Wednesday, January 17th, I got a phone call, a text message, and an email at 5:30 in the morning alerting me to the schools being delayed. Then I also got a call to my work number that's forwarded to my cell phone. So it's 4 different notifications that school is opening 2 hours late. Yesterday, I got the same number of alerts in the afternoon telling me that schools were in a shelter in place. So it's all good. The communication systems are intact and they work. But a major question comes to mind. What constitutes need to know when it comes to sending messages out to the district families in that fashion? Who decides when we'll be notified of something? Obviously, we need to know if schools are opening late or closing early, but what about acts of hate in our schools? What about direct threats to our school security coming in via group chats between the students? What about AI being used very inappropriately? I'm just unclear on who decides when the families know and what. And I hope that in the future, the entire district will be made aware of acts of hate and threats to our students in the schools. When racial slurs and multiple swastikas were carved in the bathrooms here in December of 2021, Dr. Gonzalez, you issued a statement with the mayor, the town council, and many others the very next day. But in December of 2023, when a Jewish student found a swastika in the same school, your small acknowledgement in the community newsletter came days after we had all already found out because we talked to each other. Many of us have kids in multiple schools in the district. Why doesn't one act of hate warrant notification to everybody? It should. One act is too many. And without the proper communication to the community, we can't rally together to combat it or any other acts of hate as well. So in the age of constant communication, which we all know is here, AI, ChatGPT, and the always changing social media platforms, you as the board have to know that many of the students will find out about things happening in the schools quite possibly before their parents do. I would hate to find out about a hate image or anything of the sort in a different school in the district from my kid because he found out on a group chat with his friends who have siblings in that school. I was told to call them GCs, so for the sake of the students, I'll refer to them as that, but they're the hottest thing since sliced bread. And it's just one example of how technology and communication is always present and ever changing. We all need to accept that and adjust our policies, and I hope that you'll take all the technological advances and specifically the changes in the way that students communicate with one another into account when you reevaluate the district's communication policies next. Thank you. Oh, happy Board Appreciation Month.
Kyle George. Speaking of ad hominem attacks, Sahar Aziz has made baseless accusations of Islamophobia against members of the community. It's shameful that you tried to curtail my First Amendment right to talk about Policy 5520 with a very relevant and real-world scenario, but you let her deride the character of community members. I want to talk about something that happened in a neighboring district. Scotch Plains recently scheduled professional development centered around the book Mornings in Janine. The Scotch Plains superintendent said, at the recommendation of staff members, an upcoming session was set to focus on the Mornings of Janine. The book's author weaves together the intricacies of Palestinian people while delving into universal themes of shared humanity and love. Shared humanity and love. That's a bold claim given the author. Mornings in Janine was originally published under the title of The Scar, that's S-C-A-R, of David. The book's author is Susan Abuhala. If that name sounds familiar, it's because her daughter Natalie Abuhala is listed on Canary Mission, a site that tracks anti-Semitism, and Natalie was once defended by Sahar Aziz. I've spoken about that before. Susan is also listed on Canary Mission. Susan Abuhala once posted online, the world, quote, "The world will be a better place when Israel is wiped off the map and Palestine is once again the glorious pluralistic place it always was. The end of that anachronistic colonial experiment is near. The future is Palestinian, indigenous, black, post-colonial, post-capitalist," end quote. Does that really sound like the kind of source a district should use for professional development of its teachers? Obviously not. Due to pressure, Scotch Plains postponed the PD. I mention all of this because we've seen issues with PD here in Westfield before. During 2020, teachers were given controversial PD. Also as part of that same era, BLM at school endorsed books were brought into Westfield. As we saw right after October 7th, and as I and others have informed you recently, elements of the BLM organization celebrated the Hamas terror attack on social media. BLM at school, the organization, put out a statement on October 17th that was anti-Israel and called for decolonization, quote unquote. This kind of outside influence can't be allowed to affect our teachers and children. What are we doing in Westfield to make sure that any future PD is fully vetted and that the materials that we are using in the classroom aren't still affected by lapses in judgment over the past few years? Thank you.
Hi, Scott Kessler, Westfield. When my children were smaller, we were in athletic class that we, at the beginning of the class or the end of the class, we would talk about our highs of the week and our lows of the week. And I want to bring up, for the last month since the last board meeting, the highs of the month and the lows of the month. I'm going to start with the lows. When we were here in December, we heard from members of our community that we were exaggerating the amount of anti-Semitism that existed and currently existed. And then less than 24 hours later, a swastika was found in a bathroom at our high school. And it took some time for that to be communicated to all of the parents in the district. It was communicated in an email that you really had to click through to even see anything about it. That was a month ago. Since then, what have we heard about it? Exactly, nothing. There's been nothing about it. There's been no follow-up. We don't know if there's been any investigation. We don't know if the person who carved the swastika has been identified, if there's been any type of action taken or any action taken that would prevent anything like this from happening again in our schools. We just don't know. We do know that there's a way to track who enters the bathroom at certain times, so probably the person could be identified if we cared about it, but I just don't know if the school district does care about it because nothing has been done and nothing has been communicated. And so we talk about Holocaust studies and we ask, why is that important? Should we talk about other genocide too? Yes, we can talk about other genocide too, but it's important to talk about the Holocaust. It's important to teach about the Holocaust. That's why it's mandated that we do it, right? We're required to do it, and it's important that we do it. And that brings me to the high of the month, which is the Holocaust curriculum that our 8th graders just went through. I have an 8th grader in the school district. He probably doesn't like me saying that in a public forum, but I have an 8th grader. And what I saw and what I heard from the teachers, the 8th grade teachers, they shared with us what the students did, and it was fantastic. They shared the gallery of all the different projects that the children submitted, and they allowed the parents to see that, one, a lot of us are personally, we have family members who were in the Holocaust, who are impacted by the Holocaust, and we were able to share our family member stories. And for people who had no other connection to the Holocaust, they got to share their reflections on what the Holocaust meant to them and how they were affected by what they learned in school. And I want to thank the school and the teachers for doing that. So that was my high of the month, was that program, and I insist that we continue on it, and it should not be infringed upon by other people's stories, because the story of the Holocaust is important to a large community here in Westfield. Thank you.
Kathy O'Gara, Westfield. I appreciate that sign-in because last month, someone took a picture of the sign-in and then smeared an individual who spoke, which was, I felt, very inappropriate. I don't know if this makes it more confidential or less so. I don't know. But in any event, I've been coming more recently to these meetings, and I've noticed when we talk about hate in our schools, which is painful to recognize that it's occurring, it seems to be in two categories: anti-Semitism and other forms of hate, Holocaust and other genocides. And then we have no place for hate in our schools, but that's an extension or an arm of the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, and it started out as an organization to combat anti-Semitism. That's largely its focus. And we have extensive Holocaust studies at the elementary, middle school, and high school, which we talked about this evening. That was interesting. But still swastikas, and I'm wondering why. And I think that some individuals raised really important questions this evening. I would love to know, does the child get interviewed? What was the thinking? I think that could help prevent this type of occurrence. Sometimes I wonder, is it ignorance? It's like writing FU on the wall and knowing it's going to get a big response? I just don't know. Without asking children why, like what made you consider doing that, I don't know that we'll ever know. And I do wonder, are those questions asked, or is it just straight to punishment? And I do think consequences are very, very important for that form of hate or any form of hate, but I'd love to have an understanding of why. It occurred to me that, we really do a lot of Holocaust studies, and is doing more and more and more the answer, or are we missing something? Because no one wants to be in a community where this is occurring. I also wondered, is it somewhat of a backlash for some groups that feel, or some individuals who feel, that's the only genocide that matters, and we're not talking about other genocides. We want to create upstanders, but children are seeing in our community, upstanders are being punished if they're upstanding for the wrong movement. Like, for instance, me standing up for our Palestinian neighbors, I've been threatened, physically attacked, and my work has been contacted multiple times. So, and my children see that. So they, the message is, it's got to be the right upstanding, right
Thank
group.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I started coming to these meetings.
Can you just state your name?
I'm sorry, Revital Farrer from Westfield, New Jersey. I started coming to these meetings for two reasons. Number one, because I was afraid for my children's safety. And number two, because I was very upset by conduct of board members. I believe that politics does not and should not belong in our schools or our school board. School is a place where our children need to feel safe, need to feel included. Scott Galloway, a professor at NYU, has said that one of the greatest compliments he receives from students at the end of the term is, "Wow, I don't even know what your political views are." He says that is when he knows that he did his job, because he gave his students the tools to find their own ways in life and form their own views. That is the job of our teachers, to let our children find their own way in life and feel free and included without being tainted by views or opinions of teachers, mentors, including Board of Education members. I understand also that everybody has a right to attend these meetings and to speak up. However, I find it extremely disturbing that certain people have been brought into these meetings to intimidate and harass constituents of this school board. People have acted aggressively towards people and our children. They came here to lecture us about terrorist organizations, lied about what municipality they were from, and in fact, it turns out that this particular person has actually been arrested at rallies in New York City for assaulting police officers and has been allowed to come here and harass Westfield residents. So I believe, number one, if people are lying about where they're from, they should not be allowed in these meetings in the future. And also, as a board, you guys need to decide the correct forum for who is allowed in here and what they are allowed to do, especially if they are not from this town. I think that that is a privilege that people should have, and that's up to you guys to discuss. My last point is about the growing anti-Semitism. At the last meeting, a Board of Ed member asked if anti-Semitism is in fact a problem, and if it is, that's terrible. But is it a problem, and that we need numbers so that we could truly appreciate whether or not it is? Well, I have some numbers for you. According to the FBI, hate crimes against Jews have gone up by 400% since October 7th, probably way higher than that number because I last looked this up a month ago. 700% on college campuses. 24% of American Jews have personally reported being a victim of a hate crime since October 7th. So clearly this is a significant problem. How are these numbers for you? 2 days after our last meeting, there were swastikas found in our high school and the high school of a neighboring town. As a few of my predecessors have asked, I would love to know how this is being handled and what exactly is being done. I know that the communication from Scotch Plains High School was light years above what we had gotten in Westfield. I also find it extremely disturbing that on the day that these swastikas were found, before the marker was even dry, Board of Ed a member tweeted, and I'm going to quote, okay.
Thank you.
Oh, it's when I start. Got it. Hey, I'm JJ. My last name is Betzalel. I'm also a Westfield resident. I would love Tali to be able to finish what she wanted. I think it's, I'm not going to speak to all of you. I should be speaking to all of you as a group, but I would like to single out one of you. It's very rude to completely disrespect somebody who's speaking to you as a community member and just sit on your phone like this, acting like that person doesn't exist. I'm sorry, I just stood over there. That's incredibly rude. You can do whatever you want, say whatever you want, post whatever the hell you want, obviously, but that's not cool. At least give her the respect. She sits here and listens to you drone on the whole time. Let her do the same. Just sit here and smile. That's totally fine. Don't pretend like you're on your phone. To finish the point that Scott was trying to make about why Holocaust is so important in the education, and to go on what Tali was saying, Jewish Americans are 2.4% of the population, and they're targets of more than half of the religious-based hate crimes. I don't know what other numbers are necessary. It's pretty straightforward. I don't need to drone on about it, and I'm not going to make a whole thing about it either. I came up also to finish somebody else's speech. I apologize. I didn't really come or write anything. I really just wanted to say that was incredibly rude, like it is now. And also, you know, I really appreciate the rest of you being here and doing everything else that you do. I have a lot more to say. Oh, and one other thing on the SJP thing. Sorry, it wasn't about SJP. It's just about the fact that, like Tali said also, our kids should be safe here. And just like she said, I didn't have to. She just mic dropped the whole thing. The fact that you had somebody come here who literally punched a cop in the face at the Christmas tree lighting at Rockefeller Center, that's the guy who's going to come here, take videos of us, FaceTime and like act like and tell us that Hamas's charter isn't what it is. Sorry, let me go to that other thing, right? Hamas's charter, you know what, I'm not going to waste the time because this isn't the place for it. Right. This isn't the place for it. That guy shouldn't be here talking about it. It's as simple as that. If you want to go ahead, we can have a moment of silence for everybody who's perished. That's fine. But everybody's side has some fact to it, some truth to it, of course. That's why there's always two sides of a story. But if you're not even going to listen or act like that person exists in front of your face, then how are you going to have that conversation? That's about it. Let the 40 seconds be a moment of silence, right? Like what else? You should want that moment of silence for both sides, by the way. Here's somebody on this side saying both sides, okay? Just want to point that out one last time, okay?
Hi, Lauren Goubert. I want to say also happy Board Appreciation Month. I very much appreciate all of your hard work that you guys put into being board members. Dr. Gonzalez, as you know, our Jewish community has been extremely disappointed by your failure to support us and recognize and condemn the terrorist attacks on Israel on October 7th, like so many of your surrounding superintendent colleagues have done. However, after the November meeting, when you made a statement at the beginning of the meeting that you strongly condemn anti-Semitism, amongst other important topics that you mentioned that you condemn, as well as when you spoke up at the end of the meeting about wanting to work better on the framework of our DEI curriculum in the Westfield schools. Those were words from you that definitely helped our Jewish community to feel a little bit better that you were hearing us, and thank you for that. In spite of that, there was still an incident in December with a swastika found in the high school bathroom. That is because you've not done enough. Your words have not been enough, and your words have not been put into actions to prevent anti-Semitism from happening in our schools. By not condemning the terrorist attacks on Israel on October 7th, you showed the entire community where you truly stand, and now students in your town feel comfortable making anti-Semitic drawings on their school bathroom walls for everyone to see because their own educational leader cannot verbally stand up for anti-Semitism and condemn an attack against the Jewish people. So why should they condemn anti-Semitism either? In addition, it wasn't important enough to you to immediately get out a solitary statement to the community about this incident on the day that it happened. But instead, you waited to roll out your statement combined with your monthly newsletter the next day. Some of the characteristics that are used to describe a good superintendent are emotional intelligence and empathy. You have not shown these characteristics by failing to actively listen to the Jewish community of Westfield's feedback and perspectives and create solutions that produce positive outcomes for everyone in your district. In addition, if you could ethically and morally condemn the terrorist attacks on October 7th and have harsher consequences for students who participate in acts of hatred, then you would show your community and students the firm stance you are taking on anti-Semitism and all acts of hatred, and then we wouldn't have to deal with symbols of hatred on the kids' school bathroom walls.
Hi, Michael Sherman, Westfield. Here we are, another month has gone by, 109 days since the horrific terrorist attack in Israel, and Dr. Gonzalez still has not admitted that he was wrong, and the board remains silent. In all this talk about Israel and Gaza, Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and everything else on this topic, the true issue pertinent to this body has gotten lost. The issue before us is that Dr. Gonzalez has been unable to condemn the acts of Hamas on October 7th as barbaric terrorism. Plain and simple. Until he does that, this entire discourse will not end. So many of the superintendents of our neighboring communities that failed to act appropriately at the outset of the war quickly corrected their wrongs. And I guarantee you, since that moment, their school board meetings have not been about the ongoing war. Full stop. Their boards and superintendents acted decisively to admit their shortcomings and issue the statement that their communities needed to hear. They plainly addressed the facts of what transpired. That is what you have failed to do. And that is why we will come here every month in anger. Yes, we are angry about Hamas's actions. Yes, we are angry that so much of the world has shown its true anti-Semitic stripes in the days since. But that is not what we are angry about here. We are angry that you, the people in charge of the education of our children, have not shown us that you can be unbiased, empathetic, and educated. This is not about the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This is about our complete distrust of a school system led by someone who fails to act in the face of such extreme hate. I am sure you are tired of these types of public comments. I'm sure you're tired of hearing of our anger. But I have news for you. You control this narrative. You have the power to stop the anger and correct the wrong. We are still waiting for you to do the right thing. Do your jobs, state the facts, show the students of this community that you can call balls and strikes, and teach them the importance of correcting wrongs. Or step aside. This nonsense has to end. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to close public comment. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.